Okay, commissioners, why don't we, if everyone could take their seats, we'll get started. Welcome, everyone, to meeting 2014 of the Toronto Transit Commission. Are there any declarations? We already did declarations of conflict under the Conflict of Interest Act this morning. There were none. The minutes of the previous meeting had been moved, and there was no business arising out of the minutes. So why don't we run through the agenda, see what items we can pass or hold, and then go from there. There are deputations on a few of them, so obviously we'll hold those ones. The CEO's, number one is the CEO's report. I'll hold that under my name. Yeah, sure. Point of order?
Add a deputant because we're past the time. When is the proper time to?
We can do it on that item or after we just do the run through.
Okay, thanks.
I'll hold the ACAT minutes so the ACAT chair can introduce them. I'm also going to hold the presentation on our customer satisfaction for a presentation. Item number 4, which is the TYSSE claim settlement that was dealt with in camera. Move the the actions taken in camera by Commissioner Byers. All in favor? That carries. Item number 5, which is a TYSSE settlement of claim, the Wilson Yard modifications. Moved by Commissioner Campbell. The actions taken in camera. All in favor? No opposed. That carries. Number 6, contract U27, Union Station second platform and concourse improvements, settlement of claims. Moved by Commissioner Fragadakis. The actions taken in camera. All in favor? That carries. Item number 7, there is a deputant, so we'll hold that. Item number 8 and 9, I think they're going to be presentations, so we'll hold those. Item 10, there are deputants. Item number 11, 12 Kingston Road, service to Variety Village. Staff recommendations moved by Commissioner Crisanti. All in favor? That carries. We have a motion here on item number 12, moved by Vice Chair Heisey, that this item be referred to staff to report back at such time as recent amendments to the City of Toronto Act related to the governing of meetings by a local board are proclaimed into force and effect. All in favor of Commissioner Vice Chair Heisey's motion? We're deferring this because the City of Toronto Act changes. Okay, all in favor? That's no opposed, that carries. Subway air quality, item for information. You can ask questions to it or speak to it. You want to hold it?
Just to pay compliments.
Okay. What's a compliment? We're at a TTC meeting. Okay, so we have an added agenda item with a deputant, which I guess we'll call item number 14. And that's a motion by the Vice Chair and myself, so we'll wait for that deputant. And which brings us back to the top of the agenda and the item number 1 in this. Oh yeah, sure, do that. Yep. Okay, so this is Commissioner Minwong moving that BYD be added to the deputant list for item number 9. So we'll waive our procedure for that. All in favor? That carries. Okay, so we've added that. We've got our new item on 14, and we'll go to number 1, and I'll ask the CEO to give some introductory remarks to the CEO's report.
Actually, can I move amendments to vary the agenda and deal with item number 7?
Sure. Do we expect other councillors that aren't here to be upset by that?
I don't know where we should be.
Fair. Okay, so a motion to deal with vary the order paper and deal with item number 7 first. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yep.
Well, I know we have a public.
So yeah, we'll have the deputant go first, but is everyone okay with that? All in favor? That carries. So item number 7, which is the status and future of Danforth Garage. How are we looking there? Okay, go ahead.
The TTC is one of the biggest landowners in Toronto. Unfortunately, a lot of that land is not ideal for office space. As a result, the TTC rents out a significant amount of office space from the private sector. This rent is at market rates and is often in premium locations in our city because of business requirements. Money we spend on rent is money we can't spend on buses, subways, or streetcars. And now there are rumblings about declaring this working division surplus and redeveloping this site. What exactly those plans are, I don't know, because it's still wrapped in purple paper and not available to the public. Under the current rules of surplus lands are transferred from the TTC to Build Toronto and sold off with the profit going to the city and the TTC not truly benefiting from the loss of its property. Previous iteration of City Council did this to surplus property of the TTC at Yonge and Wilson. The TTC not only took a significant write-down at that time, during a time when routes were being cut, but it lost an annual revenue of $500,000 a year. We are going through the budget process in 2 weeks. Ask Andy if he could use another $500,000 in his budget. No doubt there will city councilors that feel comfortable about defending these actions about selling TTC land. Shortly after this item will be concluded, we will be debating the purchase of 444 Nova buses. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to yell at you, you will politely ignore me, and wham bam, we get another 440 buses. What gets lost in this stellar display of city politics in action is because of the delivery timeline, the first 325 of these buses are 50% covered under the current PTF program. So the city is only paying half that cost. The remaining 115 buses are not covered under the current PTF program. However, it is my understanding that the replacement transit infrastructure program will be based on a one-third split of costs between all three levels of government. This would be the capital cost for these buses at about one-third, an admirable goal. The city only pays 30% of the operations budget of the TTC. 70% of the TTC must raise itself, mostly from its passengers. This is an other than admirable goal. I have long been in favor of diversifying our revenue streams. The TTC needs its property and the ability to maximize revenue from property it owns. I agree that Danforth could use a little work to make it fit better into the 21st century development needs of that community. This board has 4 civilian members on it. These people bring significant expertise to the board, including expertise in P3 projects. We could partner with the private sector to redevelop this space. The TTC would keep some of its remodeled space for its use. The remainder would be for the P3 partner under a long-term land lease from the TTC. There is precedent for long-term land leases being issued in Toronto. We could partner with a multitude of companies, and the site could be done to include office space, retail space, or even rental space. This way, we get the space we need, the community gets redevelopment it wants, and the TTC has a revenue stream from this location going forward. For the record, I do not own any shares in any of these companies mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for this presenter? Yeah, one question, Commissioner Byers.
You'd like the TDC to retain this property for its own use
As opposed to selling it, because that way we have a revenue stream from it. If we develop part of it with a P3 partner, then they can use that part, we get some. We're not going to get gobs of money, but we're going to get some money. That some money can go into the pile and make us more independent from needing more subsidy from the City Council.
Great, thank you very much. Questions of staff? Any to speak?
Of course, that we cannot really speak to the issue because it is an in-camera issue.
There are,
I'm moving what we did in camera.
okay, so there are some, Yeah, in front of us, there are some in public recommendations, so I'm assuming.
And I'll move them as well.
Item number 1, 2, 3. Number 3 being the board requests that staff work closely with Toronto Realty Agency, Build Toronto, and City Real Estate to jointly develop the site strategy for betterment of the city. Report back by mid-2018 regarding additional TTC uses proposed for the property. Great. All in favor of Commissioner Mahevik's motion? Oh, sure. Go ahead. Question to the mover.
So this report back by mid-2018, so if anything should develop before that, and that would require this report back, it could come sooner than mid-2018, like, for example, by the end of the first quarter.
So
Okay.
no later than mid.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions of the mover or any other speakers? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? None. That carries. Thank you. So we are done with item number 7. Now we can move to the first item on the agenda, and I'll ask the CEO to give some introductory remarks before questions.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep my remarks fairly brief because I would like to give the Deputy Chief Operating Officer, Jim Ross, over there, and the Chief Service Officer, Deputy CEO, Rick Leary, chance to make a presentation, which we promised you last quarter on the performance at the moment against the performance scorecard. We promised you we would do that because, as you know, the performance scorecard is measured quarterly. So we've got a brief presentation on surface with Rick and subway with Jim, and they'll be up shortly. But just a few headlines. As of today, we're 103 days away from the first day of revenue service of the Toronto-York Spadina subway extension, the TYSSE. The date we're aiming for is December the 17th. That will be preceded by an official opening with the VIPs, but the date we're aiming for is that date again, Sunday, 17th of December. Now, what I would like to say to everyone, members of the public in particular, but the commissioners, there is a huge amount to do before then. We've still got one more station to finish, Finch West. That should complete by the end of September. We then have literally hundreds of thousands of pieces of equipment to test and commission individually, and then as a system, including systems checking back to Hillcrest, back to the control center, and then you do the whole system in the round. We've already started that process. What then follows testing and commissioning is a program of trial ops, which Mike, the COO, is going to lead for us. So you do trial operations, and then to finalize our preparations, and again, this is all done in parallel, we will produce, and ultimately I will sign off a safety case. So it's done on a pyramid basis, a hierarchical basis, whereby all the subject matter experts sign the safety case, then the chiefs sign it, and ultimately I will sign to say that it's safe to open. That will probably happen the day before we open. So there's a huge amount to be done, but we're totally focused on that. TYSSE is of course powered by or controlled by automatic train control. The first phase of ATC signaling goes live on the on line 1 within 2 weeks. So that is a crucial test for us because that first phase from DuPont to Wilson will effectively test that system live with real passengers after all of the various closures that we've had. And pardon? It's the 17th, Mike, right? Sunday the 17th, I think Sunday's the 17th, yeah. So that, again, is imminent. All this work that we've been doing over the 5 years, a lot of it is coming together now. Phase 2 of ATC will be concurrent with the opening of TYSSE, which is why Phase 1 is so important. So that's coming together. TYSSE will, of course, feature Presto equipment. All the Presto gates are in. They've all been tested, but we've still got some work to do to sort out some of the fare issues, to get the what I call full service vending machines into the system. They'll be the first to be deployed. Add value machines will be fitted to all of the stations. Collectors will not be in booths, they will be outside the booths. So that's the third big challenge within the next 100 days. The fourth big challenge within the next 100 days is to keep the pressure on with Bombardier. As usual, I've checked in before the meeting, and as of just a week ago, because I was away last week, the CEO of Bombardier still maintains we are on track for 70 streetcars cumulative by the end of this year. They've still got a few challenges they're working through, but we're keeping the pressure on. There are a myriad other things that we're doing in terms of culture change. And one of the things I'd like to just highlight within my commentary, I hope you've had a chance to read my commentary. We have now completed what has been a substantial exercise of succession planning and targeted recruitment, both from outside with the company, but also promotions within the company. And we have now completely refreshed both the executive and the next level down. So you have the executive and then you have the heads of department. And it is a badge of honor to me and something I'm very proud of, that on merit, the executive below me is now made up of 6 women and 6 men. And bear in mind, 5 years ago, there had never been a woman on the TTC executive. So a few people I'd just like to highlight for you today. We have Tara over there. Tara Ball is the acting CFO on my executive. Over to my left, Megan McRae, Executive Director HR, joins the executive. I already let you know that behind you, Kirsten is the Acting Chief Customer Officer, again on the executive. Jenny, some of you probably haven't met. Jenny Matharu is my effectively office manager guru, looks after me, keeps me in order, but also is the council liaison as a mirror to the community liaison that we have with David Nagler. And also Steve Conforti has joined us from the city, so we poached him. Josie Levita is not talking to me anymore because we stole Stephen from the city, and Stephen is already making a massive change. So lots of change within the executive, but I'm very proud of that. It seems to me that one of your legacies as a CEO should be to really create a very high-performing team. One last point to mention, CSS. We're very proud of the fact that the CSS is again at a record high, 82%, and we have a presentation for you that would say how we got there. It's not by chance. It is reflective of the work we've been doing over the past 5 years with the support of this board. So please do listen to what we've got to tell you on CSS. If we can maintain the push to the end of the year, the actual increase in terms of the percentage of customer satisfaction will be something like 72 to 82%, which at 10 percentage points is huge. So we're really keeping our fingers crossed over the next 2 quarters, quarter 3, which we're now in, and quarter 4. If we can maintain our average, that will be a massive achievement for this team and for this board. So with that, what I do want to talk about now is the performance, the underlying performance. So I'm not sure who's going first, Rick or Jim. Rick, I think we're going to go with you first. This is a synopsis of what's happened on quarter 2's performance, good and bad, and what we're doing about it. That will be followed straight away by Jim for the subway. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Through you, Mr. Chair. In December of 2015, I came to this board and I gave a presentation and talked about vehicle performance. And I talked at the time about, I called it system performance. It's a system approach. It's never one item that affects your service. Since that time, we've taken a hard look at the vehicle reliability as well as the human factors, for operators leaving early, leaving late, possibly speeding. There's external factors, the traffic, accidents, and construction that happen day in and day out throughout the city. And the big one for me at the time was talking about schedules and writing schedules that actually allowed you to get from A to Z in the time frame that was required, recognizing congestion and the growth within the city. We've had some substantial changes over the last 2 years. At the time I talked about how this was a 5 to 7 year process. We were using 30-year-old technology and a new means of tracking. So I'm actually very pleased when I look at the 3-year overview and the continued improvement on the trend that we have up on the screen, 2017 over 2015. More recently, we had a discussion with staff regarding the seasonality of schedules. Unfortunately, we've always had a schedule that we did year-round, and we know that we have the 4 seasons, and they change as we move forward. Also, you've seen this one before. This is the short turns. And when I talked about this 2 years ago, I talked about the fact that this has a huge negative impact to our customers. So today on Streetcar, there are, again, 3,000 fewer short turns a week than there were just a few years ago. And what's that really impact mean? That means there's 200,000 people a week that are no longer negatively impacted by asking to get off their vehicle. And if it only takes 5 minutes to get on the next vehicle, well, that's 1 million minutes a week all right, that we were negatively impacting customers that no longer are we today. And again, as we do this, it allows us to actually measure the true travel times from A to Z so we can continue to refine our schedules as we move forward. So I'm pleased when I see these two charts that the progression continues. One of the things that staff really picks up on is now that the numbers are more manageable, where is the issue, where are the problems? Right? And we know that 3 of the routes alone account for 77% of short turns. So now we continue to put mitigation initiatives together, and again, lessen the short turns. On the bus side, you know, it's not as I'm going to say as easy on the bus side, because when I showed you the streetcar, there's 11 routes, so you can make some modifications relatively quickly. There's 174 routes on the streetcar side. So when I start seeing that all of a sudden, you know, you're 3 or 4 points up on streetcar, I'm looking at that as definitely as a positive, and the huge swings are making a difference. Again, short turns. We're finally establishing a base. We know where they are. We're able to do the A to Z measurements. I'm seeing this as a big success. With that, again, we know that 5 routes account for almost 40% of all short turns in bus. All right, and those are TYSSC and Eglinton Crosstown, where all the construction is. Very difficult to get across the city. We put mitigation initiatives in place. We're adding extra vehicles when we can or in the course of the day. We call them run as directed. Again, stop short turning, take people where they want to go when you get them on a vehicle. In 2016, just a quick overview, we were able to make a number of changes after that presentation. Then in 2017, we made an additional 16 changes, 8 of them to date, and 8 of them are about to be implemented this coming fall. So we're seeing a lot of things improve. You know, that doesn't look like a lot of numbers until you also take into consideration all the service requirement changes for the construction that's going on. And, you know, and so in addition to what they're doing for the reliability that we've put in place, they're also making changes to address construction. So we know there's been 24 schedule changes just to address the Metrolinx work and 31 changes, all right, to address just the city of Toronto's construction. Before I ask for any questions, I'll just leave with a statement. 3 years ago when I first got here, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of many articles in the newspaper talking about bunching and gapping in short turns at the TTC. Those complaints, although they do occur, they have been minimized and are no longer in the top 10 complaints at the TTC. So I am pleased with the direction they're going in. I know it's only going to get better over the coming years when CAT AVL is installed, the vision system that we're putting in place, and so I think we're headed in the right direction.
Could we go to commissions? If you don't mind, let's go to Jim next so you can hear the subway. I've just got one final comment to make, and then it's all yours for questions, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Kevin.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Ross. I'm the deputy COO, and the purpose of this presentation is to bring a little bit more insight into some of the subway service than the high-level indicators in the CEO's report can provide. As one of my colleagues will tell you later on this afternoon, the satisfaction score for subway riders is at a high of 81%, and while we're not achieving many of our high-level targets, as you will see that the subway service is improving and we are reducing delays. So for the next 2 slides, I've focused on the Yonge University line, our busiest line. Average weekday ridership is over 736,000 customers. This chart reflects trains per hour, which is one of the key performance indicators for subway service. And we measure trains per hour by looking at the train passes through 12 different points evenly distributed across the subway line in both directions. This measure has shown overall improvement since 2014, late 2014, when we began to measure it and used it as an indicator of service quality. On the CEO's report, the target is 25.5 trains, which is 100% of what's scheduled. So basically, in order to achieve that target on this line, we would have to have a perfect morning rush hour every day for 4 weeks in a row. This chart reflects another key indicator that we use to measure subway quality, and that's headway adherence. And this reflects the number of trains that arrive at stations within an acceptable customer wait time. Here you'll see that on Young University, this too has also shown a steady improvement since 2014, which is our base year. Our target for this measure is 96%, which is consistent with the service standards for the TTC. And we are moving towards being able to achieve that on a fairly consistent basis. In early 2016, we committed to reducing subway delay incidents and minutes of delay by 50% over 5 years, based on the results of the 2014 year, which we used as a base. As we are in the third year of this initiative, the indicators in the CEO scorecard reflect a target of 30% reduction, which is essentially a linear 10% per year. This chart shows that a year-to-year comparison of how we've done and reflects a total reduction in delay minutes over 20% when compared to the first 7 months of each year since 2014. And it shows a fairly consistent reduction in delay minutes every year for 3 years. So if we look closer at delay minutes and our attempts to reduce them, what we find is that almost half of the delay minutes that we record are beyond the direct control of the TTC. These include passenger illness, trespassers at track level, security disturbances, weather, and such. While we have been successfully able to reduce a number of subway delay issues, we continue to struggle with some of these non-controllable issues. You can also note that the percentage of not controllable versus controllable delays have increased since the 2014 base year and are now over 48% non-controllable. Our top non-controllable delays, as reflected in this chart, you can see the passenger illness incidents continue to lead all non-controllable delays in the subway. Preventing these is largely beyond our control, but we continue to work towards improving our response, clearing the trains as quickly as we can to reduce the length of the overall incident. We partner with Toronto Paramedic Services to station paramedics at key locations during rush hours to improve the response times. And as we move forward with station transformation, we anticipate that we'll be able to clear these incidents even faster, as we'll have customer service assistants and more station supervisors in the station to help us clear those incidents. The largest increase in delay minutes is the result of trespassers at track level, which Andy's spoken about at several board meetings. We have an increase of 124% from 2014, and these account for over 1,000 minutes of delay so far this year alone. These are largely beyond our control, and we're continuing to look for opportunities to improve our response and how quickly we can clear them. The top controllable delay codes, we've seen most improvement in reducing track fire smoke incidents. Incidents are down by almost half, and delay minutes are down by 43%. That's a reduction of 14 hours of delay compared to the same period in 2014 this year alone. To achieve that, we've focused on track level cleanliness, removing where we can the trash, leaves, and other debris that serve as fuel for track fires. We worked closely with Toronto Fire to modify our response procedure so that we can reduce the incidence of false alarms. And our subway infrastructure department continues to work on a number of issues specific to reducing the frequency and severity of these track fire incidents. As I noted, some of the successes, the track fire incidents are down 48% with 43% fewer delays. Toronto Rocket reliability achieved 1.49 million kilometers between service-affecting delays of 5 minutes or more in May. That is on par with world-class metros. I'm not confident that we can sustain that for a very long period of time, but it does indicate that we are getting better. The last of these successes is that this summer was much more forgiving than last summer was, and that, combined with a very aggressive overhaul program, has reduced the HVAC delays on T1 trains by over 61% on the Bloor-Danforth line compared to where we were last year. As I mentioned, trespassers at track level is a significant issue and an ongoing challenge. We are working closely with that. Toronto Police and our Transit Enforcement Unit are working on strategies on how we can reduce that. Speed control has come up at several of these meetings in the past. Speed control accounts for 3% of delay minutes, but 33% of delay incidents, and we are working to reduce that. And then lastly, the passenger illness incidents, which I spoke about.
So I hope that was useful for you. That gives you an insight into what we've been doing and the success we've had in a number of areas, but where we still face challenges and what we're doing about it. My final comment really would be, in addition to everything I talked about earlier that we're doing, we're also finalizing the budget for this year. We're dealing with PTIF, and we're preparing for the next year's collective bargaining. So to say we have a lot on our plate is an understatement. So my plea would be, please, if you can hold off any what I might call nice-to-have reports until at least January, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for any staff member, I guess, on the report or the presentations you heard? We'll start with Vice Chair Heisey.
Rick, on the short term, that's an incredible accomplishment. I want to congratulate you and the people who work with you for that. Could you quantify, and this isn't looking for criticisms, it's to understand what things cost. What were the financial costs of improving the short-term situation so substantially for the system? What did you have to do that cost the system money? And could you give me a ballpark of what that cost might be?
Okay, so in answering that through you, Mr. Chair, the real benefit of it was readjusting the schedules and spreading the headways, to be honest with you. Okay, allowing the true travel times for A to Z. So where we were committing to a 2-minute headway, if we changed the schedule and went to a 2.5-minute headway, we were able to spread the service throughout, which allowed us to stop short turning and get ourselves to start operating and leaving on time. So we have a fixed number of vehicles in the fleet, so it wasn't like we could actually add vehicles to the fleet. What we actually did was we took vehicles out of service, established run-as-directed vehicles, placed vehicles strategically around the system at locations where we knew that delays occur, and then we just fit them in. And what I tell people very often is passengers self-accommodate. If you know that it's overcrowding at a certain point at a certain time, you'll come 10 minutes later every day. And so what we really try to do is fill all those gaps, stop the gapping and bunching, and use the other vehicles differently to stop the short turns. That was how we got that success. There's a mindset, working with the operators as well.
It wasn't money, it was organization.
That's correct.
I saw that the on-time departure for streetcars, our goal is 90%. Where does that come from? And can we reach it? What do we have to do to reach it?
There's no doubt that we can reach it. It's what I've learned in my time in this industry, talking with my peers, that at least 9 out of 10 vehicles should leave the end of the line as per the schedule if you want to have a good headway operating through the system. It's not up now, but as this year, we were actually at 80% in January. So as we continue to revise these schedules, right, spreading the headways, doing creative things like run as directed, eliminating short turns, in the seasonality of it, which we just talked about 2 weeks ago as we started talking about what we're going to do for 2018, we'll get there. It's going to take a few years, though. You know, you heard me mention vehicle reliability. We know that our oldest vehicles are they're in tough shape. And so every day, a portion of those vehicles have a negative impact, so we still do some short turns because of it. But we're doing everything possible to mitigate against it.
Last question about subways. Peak trains per hour, we're currently at around 23.5. Is that about right?
Correct. I think that's correct. I don't have
And
the
then
number.
once we get ATC, pardon me, we'll get ACAT later, ATC, what number of peak trains are we going to run per hour? Roughly range.
Sir, through the chair, if I may answer that, on lines 1 and 2, we schedule 141-second headways, which is 25.5 trains per hour. We can really only realise ATC capability when the last section goes live, because you're only as good as your worst section. The intention, therefore, in 2019 is to do 25.5 competently, then nudge to 27, and then by the end of 2020 be at 30, by which point we then understand the system and we will see how far above 30 we can go reliably. The trick being never to operate your maximum capacity because you just run late. The only thing I will caution is the number of rockets available to achieve these increases in service, and you're only as good as your worst dwell. So if we continue to have excessive dwells at Bloor on the southbound, however good your signalling system is, you won't achieve 30 comfortably. So we have to take a very broad, holistic brush at improving the things we could do better at, and with the ATC signalling. The other thing about ATC is it brings more consistent performance, so the trains drive themselves consistently, and generally you'll improve runtime by up to 10% with ATC.
So the runtime goes up 10%, plus we've got 25% more trains per hour? Is it the combination of the two? Or am I doing bad math?
No, I think your sum's broadly correct, Commissioner. So we will improve service by around 20% in terms of capacity,
Right.
trains per hour, and at the same time, customers will have a faster journey time, and it will be a more consistent journey time, subject to us sorting out all the other constraints which stop us today, which includes things like long dwells at Union and Bloor southbound.
I see a lot of the passengers on line 1 are going to be really happy. That's great. Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Mahevik-Byers?
Yes, thank you. Just the places that I have folded here. To the CEO, given that you have so many conversations with the Bombardier CEO, would it be fair to conclude, I'm looking at page 12, that the 2017, that's the scorecard on the new streetcars?
That's right. So it's additional 40 for a cumulative 70 by the end of this year.
Okay, so right now, I think the highest number is 42. Are they on schedule as of the end of 44, 42, I think is the highest number I've seen.
Yes,
Are they on
we have-
schedule for the end of August?
We have 42 now, and although the monthly period fluctuates, sometimes they beat the target, sometimes they underperform. The main thing for me, I'm okay with that as long as they hit that year-end target, and they assure me they will do that.
So my math is that for the end of year target, if you look at period 9, 10, 11, 12, it's 7, 7, 8, and a 4. That's a 12, and they need another 28 to meet the end of the year, which is almost 8 a month.
They have their work cut out. They say they can still do it. Until they say they can't, that is my advice to you. Obviously, if I find out from them, or if it's obvious that they can't make it, I'll be reporting back to this board. But I challenged Benoit Poissois a week ago. He said they can still do it. They've done the math too. They know it's going to be tough, but they say they can still do it. That's the best I can give you at the moment.
Right, okay, so, but you would agree with the math that for them to achieve 70 by the end of 2017, and if we're at 42 having been delivered, that's 4 a month between now and the end of the year. Sorry, 7 a month for 4 months.
Yep, and again, we put that to them. They say that because a lot of the changes they have made at Thunder Bay are about to come on stream or are on stream now, that they can ramp it up. We have people, if not permanently, periodically go to Thunder Bay, and they see a lot of cars coming into actual final assembly along the assembly line.
Okay.
But I think that it's going to be a challenge for them, but they maintain absolutely they can still do it.
Okay, great, thank you. My next question is, around, one of my frequent chestnuts is TTC customer trips. And I noticed that we're still not on budget for the June board period. And I'm wondering, in hearing the presentation from Rick on headway versus, I don't know, have we looked very clearly at the relationship between number of rides and whether the strict adherence to, the headway has almost become like call it the Bible of how routes are managed. Do you think that it might be having, maybe there's a question to Rick, having as among the contributing factors to customer trips, having a negative impact on the number of rides? In other words, there's not enough service. So, and if I could put it bluntly, like, I'm waiting there 3-4 buses. When I get on, it's a good ride. It takes me 3 or 4 buses to get on that ride. Is there not a need to kind of balance the headway time versus the sheer volume of service that we put out there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are looking to do everything we can to match capacity to demand, right, with the vehicles that we have today. In the streetcar side, we're putting 165 vehicles out every day, and we also know that we're supplementing streetcar with buses. I think this summer we were up to about 95 buses running streetcar routes. So when we see that streetcar ridership's down, it's offset by the ridership increases that we're seeing on bus for putting buses on the streetcar routes.
A couple of other things, if I may. We are running runners-directed vehicles, so we do push-ins where a gap opens up or where we know we need to add service. But also, the reason we look at headways is one of the key drivers of customer satisfaction and therefore the likelihood of people using the service is reliability of service. If you end up not looking at headways and you end up with excess gaps, so you've either got vehicles too close together or too far apart, that means the leading vehicle will take longer to load and the one behind will get held up. So we try to space the vehicles evenly. It's good practice.
But then what about leaving people on the platforms or at the edge of sidewalks because service is great, but you just can't get on it?
Which is why when you see the ridership growth strategy in November, when we bring that will contain some radical proposals to increase service exponentially, but obviously that will come at a cost.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, we'll come back around if you have other questions. Commissioner Byers?
Thank you. First, Andy, congratulations on your executive changes and gender balance among your executive team. That's an incredible achievement and hopefully something the other members of the corporate community can take notice of, but I commend you for that. In your report, page 3, Wheel-Trans rides, I actually noticed we're kind of meaningfully below budget, both from the last quarter and year-to-date on rides. Is there anything going on there? So I'm on page 3 in your data. So Wheel-Trans customer trips June, 414,000 versus 463 target. Year-to-date, 2.08 versus 2.2 million. Anything?
Well, Commissioner, if you look at the right-hand side on the annual trend, it's still up.
Right.
So the number of Wheel-Trans rides is still increasing, but not by as much as we had predicted. I don't know if Eve or Kirsten wants to answer that.
Nothing systemic going on?
No, I don't think it's anything systemic at all. But look at the trajectory there, that dotted line, the blue line with the dots,
Yep.
you can see how far up it is. It's still increasing.
Okay. On page 6, excuse me, so mean distance between failure on the new streetcars. I know, Rick, you've told us, and we're well under their benchmark of 3,500 kilometers. You still say it's way too early. When do we start to worry about this? Because 10,000 versus 35,000 is a pretty big difference.
Later on this year, through you, Mr. Chair, later on this year, we're supposed to sit with them and talk about the reliability standards once the 60th vehicle in. What I remind people is that may not be to the goal, but the reliability of the 2 other fleets that are operating in streetcar are so low that I don't have it in front of me, but I'm pleased at least that that's the level it's at today. Knowing what they're doing, we call it the golden car, the vehicle that they're doing all the different mods on for trying to improve the reliability, knowing that they're focusing on that as well.
Great, thank you. Over on page 7, Andy, really good news on the budget side. Your revenue is almost on budget, 618 million. Your costs are well below budget. I know you mentioned this in your report. Other than Vince's departure, no, I'm just kidding. Anything,
Any other meaningful savings?
oh, he may be watching. It's a great performance. Your expenditures are quite a bit lower, below budget, even though revenue's on budget. Anything particular that's happening that is with us?
The main action we've taken, obviously we pay very close attention to revenue, but with costs, we have from the start of the year paid very, very close attention to cost and to every possibility to rein in cost. Not least because at the start of the year, we wanted to minimize any gap between budget revenue and actual. So you can close that gap by cutting back on your expenditures, and I think we've had a lot of success, and the figures clearly demonstrate that.
Yeah, good news. Last from me, page 14. So I love the new reporting format on your capital projects. Thank you for that. On Presto, so I noticed the improved performance and the fail rates going down. I was coming this morning, transferred between the Queens Quay, Streetcar, and Union Station, and they had fare inspectors there. I watched them for a little short period of time. I asked them how it was going. They did make a comment that the new monthly pass on Presto is not easily read right away on their machines. They have to go to another part of the test to know. So I was interested in that. Thought I'd pass it on. As monthly passes on Presto improve, they'll have to, anyway, I don't know whether that's new information for you
I
or...
haven't heard that. We'll take that away, because clearly we need to make sure that works properly, not least because having trialed monthly passes in a fairly low-key way, we're now pushing them big time.
Good. You're happy the way Presto is going otherwise, in preparation
It's definitely
for it?
getting better. The new add value machines are about to hit the street, so they've been tested extensively, and they contain a lot of improvements over the original add value machines, which themselves have been updated with various software patches. These things are a lot quicker, the transactions are a lot quicker, and they've also been updated for Mineris, which is the software security software that you have to comply with. So the new add values will go in shortly, and they're going to be fitted to every TTC station. As I said earlier, the other big step forward will be the full service vending machine, which is one that you can buy a Presto card at, query your value, and top up. So effectively, it's an all-in-one self-service machine. We will trial those at Wilson and at Shepherd West shortly, and that's a precursor to deploying them on TYSSE from day one.
Great. Thank you.
So we're getting there. Thank you.
Commissioner Fragedakis with questions.
Okay. Do we have any comparison of our non-controllable delay minutes with other subway systems?
Commissioner, through the chair, the answer is yes and no. We can compare these within our benchmarking group, Comment Nova, but we're not allowed to share them publicly. It's slightly continent-based, so other North American properties are indicating similar issues around, say, antisocial behaviour and trespass. So we do have them internally, but I can't share them in this forum.
What we can do is show you, it's deliberately anonymized, because that you have to sign up to be a member of Comet or Nova, but what we can do is show you where we are on a series of anonymized bars on a bar chart. So that might be something you might want to have a look at.
Sure. Do we track delay incidents of, say, greater than 10 minutes? And the reason I'm asking is I'm trying to understand if significant subway delays are increasing or decreasing.
Again, through the chair, we adopt the Comment Nova standard, which is we report all incidents, and then we report delays over 5 minutes and delays over 20 minutes, which are Comment Nova standards, and use this best practice worldwide. A lot of our incidents are very short, so if you take the speed control incidents that Jim was referring to, they're all 0 or 1 minute length delay. So there we're trying to decrease the number of incidents of speed control, and also reduce the average length of each delay that does take place.
So do we have a sense of if significant subway delays are on the increase or on the decrease?
Commissioner, through the chair.
Oh.
Sorry. I do not have that prepared today to look at delays over 10 minutes in 2014 compared to now per line, but that is something that we could put together for you if...
Sure. We can chat offline. Thanks.
Other questions? Just a couple of quick ones from me on the scorecard. Just kind of wanted a bit of maybe explanation on the capital expenditure, the base capital expenditure, where the current is 340 million, the target is 500 million. And the other one, if I could just get some more details on, is the amount of customer service on streetcars, the target of 21.7, and we're at 16.9.
So Susan, can I ask you to answer the question about CapEx spend, please?
Approximately one-third of the CapEx is with the engineering construction expansion group. So of that one-third, we are on target to spend by year-end. We're roughly at 70% expenditure present, but we're just starting a lot of our construction season right now and have awarded a lot of contracts and expecting to mobilize and forecast to spend our full one-third of this by year-end.
So while not on target now, you expect the year end will...
We normally have an S-curve in our construction expenditures, and it starts to ramp up starting now because the peak construction period begins through the summer, and being mindful that these are period 6 results that we're reporting today.
So don't forget, Chair, I know you know this, although EC&E doesn't control all of the CapEx budget, they control the real big hit items, the big dollar items.
Okay. And on the weekly service hours for Streetcar?
Rick, can you take that, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we do see that the bus service hours is over and the streetcar service hours are under. That's attributable to the fact that we are using buses on streetcar lines.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Mahavik for a second round?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just actually, my question was related to customer hours, amount of service. We're below in each of the areas here, except for the subway. And what I'm trying to get a handle on, and recognizing the streetcar piece and the bus piece, but is this really being driven by budget? Is that, at the end of the day, is that what is driving our suboptimal performance here? Is it a budget issue?
No. We're not. Do you mean, are we cutting back service to save money? Because no, definitely not. So
if our target, just say on the bus side, is 144.9, and we're 2,000 below that, and a lot of that, we would be even further below that. The reason why we're even that high is because of the streetcar. We're using buses on streetcar routes. Why wouldn't we add more service in one board period to another?
As you know, we do review it every 6 weeks. There's no one factor, but I might ask Rick to comment on the streetcar specifically.
Absolutely. Through you again, Mr. Chair. When early in the year when we were doing the budget, we budgeted for more service with the anticipation that we'd be in better shape in streetcar, for instance, with the number of streetcars in service. We've had to take a number of existing streetcars out of service. So basically what you're seeing is the budget is based on what was anticipated. Our limiting factor right now is vehicles.
On the bus side?
Bus and streetcar primarily. The old streetcars, now that we're taking them apart to assess their condition, a number of them cannot be put back into service. So that's why we're replacing.
Okay, so you're replacing them with buses. So are you telling us that in the morning AM peak, which is our busiest time period, that every single available bus that is road-ready, not counting our spare ratio, is out on the street?
Pretty much, which is why it's good that if you look at the bus mean distance between failure, which when you think back not so long ago was 6,000, the industry standard we aim for is 12,000, and in the scorecard for June 2017, we achieved 17,000. So that means more buses are staying out on the road longer. So absolutely, any available vehicle gets put out, and they're staying on the street longer, not coming back to the garage.
And would it be fair to say that now that we're in September, Queen Street is done, that the numbers for the next, well, for the September board period, we'll see a dramatic improvement on the streetcar amount of service, and the buses that you used for the streetcar routes will now be increased on the other routes to meet our target on those routes?
To a certain extent, yes. You'll see the budget go up for Streetcar because obviously when you reinstate Queen, the budget goes back up because you'll be running along Queen. There's not a direct transfer of buses necessarily to other routes because of the reason that Rick mentioned, which is because the ALRVs and the CLRVs are really starting to deteriorate. We will still have to maintain some to supplement what we have on Queen.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone to speak on the item? Commissioner Mihevc?
I think there's a lot to applaud in the CEO's report. I echo what Rick was saying around the diverse senior management team. I think that's frankly a real accomplishment for the CEO and for the TTC. It is a goal of the city. We want to reflect at the TTC at all levels of our business, the city that we are, and we are a diverse city, and I think it's just great that we are doing that. I think there's a lot of good news in this CEO's report, especially around the capital work. This period between now and the end of the year, when you think all the systems that are just coming to their fruition, from the Spadina subway to the Presto to the automatic train control, this is the long-suffering TTC passenger will be rewarded in the next 3 or 4 months for putting up with all these construction delays or construction-related delays. When the new Spadina line extension happens and ATC happens, and you're going to see more trains on the routes from 25 an hour to 30 an hour. That's going to be amazing. That I think that really will be amazing. So there's a lot happening here, and that's something that I think we can be all proud of. And maybe I'm beating a dead horse, I don't know. I am so looking forward to our call it 2.0 ridership growth strategy that's coming in November. I remember Vince Roto, even a few months ago, saying the primary driver of our TTC passengers is the economy. Well, the economy's going pretty well, and yet our ridership continues to be flat. And I do think that some of it is a lot more people are riding bikes downtown. I think, or maybe it's Uber, I don't know. We need to get a handle on that, and we need to find a way as a TTC to get ahead of this. If it means service driving ridership, I say we put that before council and ask council to consider funding strategies that get even more people out of cars and into public transit. I think that's frankly one of the challenges as all these systems that we're very proud of are coming into place. 2018 will be the real year to see whether customer trips on the TTC improve. And I really hope that they do, and I hope that our ridership growth strategy really addresses that. That's what I think is, to me, turning out to be the big challenge in this CEO's report is, while there's lots of good news, the TTC trips continues to be a concern of mine.
Thank you. Other speakers? A motion to receive the report from Vice Chair Heisey. All in favor? No opposed. That carries. Thank you. On to item number 2, which are the ACAT minutes from the previous meeting. And if I could just invite the ACAT Chair, Ms. Gillespie, just to give us a few introductory remarks to those minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Cole, and to Commissioners. Before I briefly highlight the June 29th meeting of the ACAT, I'd like to officially thank Mr. Cole for attending the most recent ACAT meeting last Thursday, and an open invitation is extended to all commissioners to attend these meetings. I'd also like to invite you to attend the public forum taking place on Tuesday, September the 19th, from 6 to 9 p.m. The first hour is 6 to 7, where the public gets to chat and meet with TTC staff over their official workstations and so forth, and it's a very informal portion of the meeting where the public gets to interact, ask questions, and seek information from staff regarding accessibility services, both now and in the upcoming 2018. The forum will be taking place at the Beanfield Center, formerly the All Stream Center, 105 Princess Boulevard at Exhibition Place. I'd like to commend the TTC staff for their organization of this event, and particularly the Wheel-Trans services for their efficient method of transporting riders to and from the event. The attendance is in the hundreds at this event, and to watch this process from behind the scenes is truly amazing, and they do it with such aplomb. Now to the June 29th quick highlights. First of all, the Design Review Subcommittee members were updated on the Vision System, Vehicle Information System, and Integrated Operations Network apps. Improvements to data sharing between Wheel-Trans services and the conventional services, allowing for real-time updates for elevator outages and service delays on the conventional system. The Presto update, the mobile fare transaction processor, bringing Presto to Wheel-Trans vehicles. ACAT was involved in the discussions on these pieces of in this software, and it's very crucial that ACAT and members who have disabilities are able to understand the process, check their balance, and tap their card. And it's a real empowering process, I must say, to be able to do that. I did have an update on the Fair Media transition strategy, but Andy has covered that, so I'll eliminate that from my remarks in the interest of time. The Wheel-Trans Committee members were updated at their meeting on the and worked with the staff consultants in preparing the RFP for the scheduling and dispatch system. Members were able to ask questions and provide feedback on the proposed initiatives, both on the technical side and the customer experience side. The Communications Subcommittee, in that month, members reviewed the 2017 accessibility-related materials, including the Wheel-Trans Access newsletter, ACAT information pamphlets, handbook for accessible travel, and tips for new riders using the conventional transit. This is a particularly crucial one, as many Wheel-Trans riders may never have used conventional transit. I myself have gone the other way and have begun to experience, as a test model, the Wheel-Trans service, and I'm learning a great deal as I go. This concludes my remarks for the activities of ACAT for the June, and I'd like to thank Mr. Cole for the opportunity to provide the board highlights and encourage any questions, comments, and so on from commissioners from now until the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Any questions of staff on the ACAT minutes? Seeing none, I will move receipt of the minutes. All in favor? That carries. Moving on to item number 3, where we have a presentation. This is the Q1, Q2 2017 Customer Satisfaction Survey results.
Thank you. So Andy has already mentioned this in the CEO's report, but I want to give you a quick overview of where we are with customer satisfaction. And obviously, Rick and Jim have obviously talked about some of the improvements we've made in performance. And the key thing around the customer satisfaction survey is to see whether those improvements that we know we've been making and been tracking operationally, customers have been noticing those changes. So just a quick background. So again, this is one of our key measures to make sure that, again, all those improvements we've been making operationally, the customers are noticing that we are tracking that change. This survey enables us to identify what matters most to customers and make sure that we're focusing our efforts on improving those areas that will improve customer satisfaction the most. So just a quick recap in this, a 10-minute telephone survey. It's a mixture of landline and mobile phone, City of Toronto residents, and we conduct this throughout the year on a continuous basis, although we report on this back to the board every half a year, and we track this every quarter, and there's 1,000 people who we survey every quarter. So in terms of top-line results, as you can see, we have been making significant progress in terms of overall customer satisfaction. If you look at it on an annual to-date basis, we are significantly higher than where we were last year and the last 2 years, which was also significantly higher than the previous 3 years. This is based on all the hard work that we've been putting in, not only on the performance side, but also in terms of all the other changes and improvements we've been making to the customer experience, like cleanliness, in terms of the information we're putting out there. All of these things affect the way that customers perceive the service and experience the service. And as you can see, that since 2015, when we've been making some key improvements to reliability, that is where levels of customer satisfaction have started to increase as customers get where they're going quicker, faster, more reliably, on top of all the other modernization efforts we've been making. As we regularly report, just the difference between frequent and occasional customers. Frequent riders are obviously more likely to experience a delay in their journey than occasional customers, which is why you tend to see this gap. The great thing here is that you can see that we've been closing that gap, which speaks to the improvements we've been making on the subway about removing and reducing the number of delay incidents and the number of delay minutes, as well as obviously the significant improvements we've been making in terms of short turns. When you look at this by mode, as you can see, everything has been quite tightly knit together in terms of satisfaction has been going up across the board, which is fantastic to see. In terms of perceptions of value for money, we track average or better value for money and see that as the guide, and this has remained pretty consistent and very high, with 9 out of 10 customers seeing that we have average or better value for money. In terms of pride in the CTC, this has remained fairly static, as constant as well across time, and we know that there's a significant emotional connection here in terms of when people are responding to the pride question, and this tends to lag behind customer satisfaction, and you would expect to, once we achieve and maintain a higher level of customer satisfaction, that the pride score would increase. If you look at pride by mode, I've spoken about this before. Pride in terms of bus customers tends to be higher, and that comes down to the interaction that they tend to have with the driver, with the operator of the vehicle, meaning that interaction can sometimes improve, and we know that from customer focus groups as well, from qualitative research, that that is a significant driver of pride among customers. So in terms of the key drivers of satisfaction, so we analyze all the data that we have collected over the 5 years now of data collection, and we're able to establish what the key drivers of satisfaction are by mode. These haven't really changed much, apart from obviously comfort of ride coming to the top, but trip duration, comfort of ride, and wait time are the top 3 across both subway, bus, and streetcar. As you can see, all those greens are where we are at 80% or higher in terms of customer satisfaction. In terms of those key drivers, so trip duration, we've managed to maintain over the period of time, and again, everything is up around 80%. In terms of comfort of ride, we've been tracking this across all modes since 2015, the end of 2015, and as you can see, again, it's remained largely static, or constant rather, which is, again, it's great that this is not something that's been falling, but the improvements we've been making have been keeping it up there. In terms of wait time, this is where you see the biggest variation, and this is where obviously subway rises to the top in terms of being on its own dedicated route, and then with streetcar and bus, you get down into more mixed traffic conditions, which is where the increasing congestion within the city starts to take its toll on the reliability of the service. Obviously, the short turns we've managed to largely eradicate, but congestion will continue to be an increasing challenge as the city increases and the number of car users increase along with that. So in terms of what our focus is to continue making sure that we deliver that reliable service, and we've been over the last few years we've made a significant improvement in that. There continue to be challenges that we face both on an infrastructure side and in terms of congestion, but as we make those improvements and those infrastructure improvements, we expect to deliver the reliability that customers are after.
Thank you very much. Questions, starting with Commissioner Campbell.
So you seem to say that the customer satisfaction was higher amongst bus riders because of their interaction with the driver.
Pride was higher.
Beg your pardon?
Pride was higher, not customer satisfaction.
Pride. Oh, pride was higher.
Pride in the TTC was higher.
Oh, okay. And which slide was that? Was that, because I'm looking at customer satisfaction by mode. Yep. Customer satisfaction is fairly close between the two.
Yes,
right?
it is.
But pride is higher because they get to talk to the driver. So,
and there are opportunities where that driver can provide that personal support and assistance to customers, whereas that is less likely on a subway or streetcar route.
So Mr. Byford, I find that interesting because now with our new streetcars, the driver is sort of cloistered away in this bubble and has, he's got a little pinhole to talk to the customers. And I'm just wondering why that design mode was changed when, clearly people seem to like to have the interaction with the drivers.
They do, but I mean, and I think in terms of the impact on pride, I think you would also be proud of a new vehicle that's fully accessible, air conditioned, and inherently
Aside from the
modern.
physical aspects.
But the reason we did that was we wanted a full width cab, and we wanted the operator to focus on driving, which is a safety critical activity, on a much more complex, much longer vehicle, and the actual transactions are automated because their vehicles are fully equipped with Presto.
Have you had or asked for feedback from the drivers themselves on their lack of interaction with the customers and how they feel about it?
On my travels, I asked them. They really enjoy operating the new streetcars.
Yeah.
It's certainly not come up to me as a problem. If customers need to speak with them, they still can.
Right. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Commissioner Byers?
On the pride information, I struggle with, I frankly have always struggled with this as a strategic objective for TTC. I don't know whether this is something, customer service, the other data you gather is much more relevant operationally. This one, much less so. Is this something, is a 5-year strategic plan thing? Was it a City of Toronto thing? Anyway, that's perhaps more of a comment than a question, but.
May I answer that, though?
Sure.
It's not a KPI. We don't obsess about it, but I think it does give you an indication as to how it's like a pulse check for Torontonians. Do they feel that we're making an effort? Do they feel that the TTC is something they should be proud of or just endure? And obviously, we want it to be the former.
Got it. On slide 12, on your factors of satisfaction, I'm just curious as to how those arrive. Are those brought forward by customers, or do you plant those factors when you're in the conversation with them? Just curious of the methodology.
So we do the regression analysis, and these are derived drivers that came from statistical modeling. So based on all the questions, this is not what customers say is important to them. That's what derived by statistical modeling.
Other questions? No? To speak? I'll just speak and commend, thanks for the presentation, and commend TTC staff, because this is obviously one of the indicators we use to show that we're making progress beyond all the other good ones you've seen in the CEO's report. And so I think obviously our customers, while we have lots of work to do and we hear from them when we don't do things well, just look at my Twitter feed, we are doing a lot of things really well, and a lot of that is a testament to the people in this boardroom, but also to the thousands of men and women on the front line who do some really difficult jobs and do it really well every day, and so thanks to them. With that, I'll move receipt. All in favor? No opposed. That carries. We are on to item number 8, which I believe we have a presentation for. And can I suggest we combine 8 and 9 together, those two bus procurements? One is the low floor buses, the Wheel-Trans buses, and the other is the conventional buses. Does that sound good? Your lack of response means, I guess it is. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. We do have a deputation on at least one of these. So there's a presentation on number 9. So why don't we do those now? The DEPs? Because we're going to combine 8 and 9 together.
Mr. Chair, when you're ready.
Please go ahead. Sorry about that.
I have a question. Are these the first of the new buses to come with the stroller zone on them? And now for the yelling. Why do we still refuse to work with Metrolinx with their bus procurement initiative? What are the cost savings that could be had by combining the buying power of the biggest transit system in Canada with that of the biggest province in Canada by population? The TTC has no problem sharing its contracts for streetcars and LRT vehicles with Kitchener-Waterloo or Metrolinx. But the TTC seems steadfastly against sharing Metrolinx bus contract. There are board members in this board who proudly self-identify as fiscally conservative. 325 of these 440 buses are eligible for PTIF funding. 115 are not. The total number of PTIF buses purchased so far will be 783. The cost, tax included, for these 444 buses is $294.3 million. That puts the pre-tax cost of a Nova bus at about $591,914.72. Just a 1% savings would be $5,919.15. Based on the 898 buses listed in this report and approved, or soon to be approved by this board, that is a potential savings of $5,315,394.21 approximately. How fiscally conservative do you feel now? Thank you. You may now ignore me and approve this bus purchase.
Thank you again for your deputation. Any questions? Yep. Well, in your questions to staff, certainly you can do that. Great. There is another deputant on this item that we added, BYD. Welcome, go ahead.
Being a pioneer in climate change for a generation now. We had a presentation to make, but we decided to save some time. We'd print it, and we have copies to leave for you if you'd like to have a look at it. We're here basically to do two things. To talk about costs and carbon, and to introduce my friend and colleague, Ted Dowling, the head of BYD Canada. Simply on the cost question, Commissioners, a single electric bus in its operating life will save the city's taxpayers $1 million. I won't do the arithmetic about how much that represents for an entire fleet. For some of you, more importantly, it avoids dumping tens of thousands of tons of unnecessary carbon on Toronto citizens over the same operating life. So we're here to encourage you to move as quickly and as efficiently as you feel comfortable to a new kind of transit fleet for Toronto. And with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague Ted Dowling, who has buses in his DNA. His dad was the founder of the transit system in Mississauga, and he's worked in this field all his life, and he made the conversion from diesel to BYD a while ago. Ted.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you very much for the time to speak. I just want to say that heavy-duty electric vehicles, especially electric buses, are the future, but they're also here today. There are over 25,000 in revenue service around the world, and they are primarily made, most of them are made by BYD, but there are several other bus manufacturers that make electric vehicles as well. When you look at the costs of maintaining these buses and operating them, they are, in some business cases, up to 70 to 80% savings in operating them over the life of the bus. You look at growing service. When we want to grow transit service, it's very difficult to grow transit service with traditional vehicles. I think you've heard that today, that there's not enough vehicles to keep routes filled. Diesel buses require maintenance. They require mechanics. The more mechanics, the more diesel buses you add to increase service, you add more mechanics, which adds cost. So in closing, I would just like to say that the electric buses are truly one of the only ways you can improve and increase your revenue service today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you very much. If you just don't mind sitting there for a sec, because you do have a few questions from commissioners, starting with Commissioner Min Wong and then Campbell.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Not to be lost on anyone, you make electric buses, yes?
Yes, we do.
Important point.
And trucks.
So, are they licensed here in Canada? Like, if we wanted to buy one, could we buy one and drive one here?
Yes, you can. Appendix G in Transport Canada, approved for importation.
Okay.
And they're currently operating in Alberta.
They're in Alberta. That kind of leads to my next question. Some people say that battery-operated vehicles have trouble starting and running in the wintertime. They in cold climates, batteries react differently than, let's say, if they're running in Los Angeles or Arizona. So have you tested, does the weather affect the battery life and/or the starting of the battery, of the engine?
No, and it comes down to the chemistry of the battery that you have. We use lithium-ion iron phosphate, which is very durable, isn't affected by the cold weather as much as other chemicals are, or chemistries are, sorry. I think that you'll find that we operate in very cold regions, whether it's north of Beijing or if it's in northern Europe, as well as we did a cold weather test in Edmonton, and we passed with flying colors.
And you've just, have you gotten any orders here in North America?
In North America, we've had several hundred orders, and we have delivered our first buses to St. Albert in Alberta, which is a cold weather climate. We also have a repeat order from them, as well as Grand Prairie and several other customers in Quebec that are looking at.
And you just got an order from Los Angeles, yeah?
Yes, we have a large order from Los Angeles, which is a fellow C40 city. In fact, we noticed a lot of the C40 cities that are part of the climate change have made a commitment to go fully electric. The impact that transit has on carbon emissions is truly remarkable. 1.5 tons a week per bus.
Can I drive your bus all day and charge it up at night and take it out first thing in the morning?
Yeah, that seems to be one of the claims, is that they don't have the range, and the vehicles that we produce have a range of over 300 kilometers, and that is increasing every year. That is not through battery technology increasing, it's more through battery management, so you get more density out of a cell through battery management software. So as in 5 years, if the battery management software gets better, then we can get more range out of the existing battery. Also, longevity of batteries. BYD is a battery manufacturer. We started out as a battery manufacturer, and that's what we do. Our batteries are 27-year batteries. So when you operate them in a vehicle for 15 years, say here, you're still going to have 15 years afterlife of those batteries to use for whatever. Toronto Hydro has been to several of our presentations and been to meetings with us, and they like the fact that they can use our batteries after the life of the bus is over. The second thing is they like the fact that you could charge at nighttime, because surplus energy is available at night, and we're paying millions of dollars in Ontario taxpayers to get rid of that surplus power. So why not use that? Charge the buses at nighttime and then use them during the day.
Is there a lot of back office costs with regard to installing chargers?
So our charger, in order to reduce the barrier to entry, we provide the charger with the bus. So every bus gets a charger, and then it's the cost of the installation of that charging system.
Right. So, I mean, just to be fair, you're not here just to tell us about, the environmental concerns and climate change and all that. You have an interest in, you sell the buses.
Yes.
So, just to get to that for a second, and we're not even close to being there yet, because we're talking about diesel buses today, but in terms of the financial arrangements, you can offer us a very competitive price in terms of the operations. In fact, you'd be prepared, I mean, there are companies that, and you might even be one of them, that are prepared to offer us a bus at the same cost it costs us to operate a diesel bus. Is that?
That would be a fair assumption, yeah.
So, yeah.
Basically, Councillor, I would put it this way, that BYD has such capacity, both financially and in terms of production, and the support of people like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, who are early investors, to offer financial counsel, that they're prepared to be flexible about the terms in which the buses are made available. You could buy a bus, you can lease a bus, you can buy the bus and lease the battery, you can resell the battery at the end if you choose to buy the battery.
I have one question. I only have 8 seconds. Can a company like BYD meet the PTIF funding requirements in terms of timelines?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Commissioner Campbell.
You're a Canadian company?
We are a Canadian incorporated company.
Okay, Canadian. So it doesn't matter really if it's owned, but in terms of the manufacture of the buses, is some of it done here, all of it done here, part of it
So
done here?
there will be a percentage done here. Currently, if you look at the United States, how they do it, they have a 70% Buy America requirement. Right. So I find it's pretty interesting that we have a 25% Buy Canadian clause here. Why not 50%? Why not buy?
But you meet that?
Yes, we would.
So you're principally an exporter then? You're the Canadian operation?
We are the Canadian operation. Yes.
But the Canadian operation is principally exporting buses, is it?
No, we import.
You're importing, but you're only selling. You said you're only selling to. You've only had a few sales in Canada.
Yeah, full disclosure, I started with BYD about a year ago, year and a,
Okay.
I'd say 14 months. Sales cycle for buses is about 2 years, 3
I
years.
see. Okay.
Or more.
So you're just getting,
Counselor, if I may, the process that BYD follows, and which they would intend to follow here, is to localize production just as soon as they develop a market.
I see,
There are
okay.
26 operations currently around the world. If there were a sufficient number of orders for buses in Ontario, they would produce buses in Ontario.
And to give you a good example of that, in Lancaster, California, we started out 4 years ago with a plant. We've already quadrupled the size, and we're the largest employer in Lancaster right now, over 600 employees.
Okay, very,
And that's blue-collar jobs being brought to California. If you tell somebody 10 years ago that someone was going to do that, they'd tell you they're crazy.
and so what's...
Mr. Chair, my apologies for interrupting. We couldn't hear on this side. Maybe you could you question?
Speak out of this side of my mouth. What I said was that in Lancaster, California, we started a factory 4 years ago, and we've quadrupled the size, and we're over 600 employees now, blue-collar jobs in California. It's a very rare thing.
And what's the life cycle of these buses? Is it 10, 12, 15 years, or is
It's your standard 12 to 15-year bus. A lot of transits.
It's a basic bus with a different method of powering. That's-
Different propulsion system. If you look at the powertrain of electric vehicles, about 70 moving parts. A diesel bus has about 7,000, around there. So there's not a lot that can go wrong.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Other questions for this deputant? Commissioner Crescenti, then DeBaremaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd heard earlier, sorry, I got in here a bit later, that the buses are currently operating, or they're going to Alberta?
They're operating.
They're operating. How long have they been operating?
7 months now. We had our first order, so 7 months, and they've reordered.
Sorry, how many buses are there?
A total of 3 for St. Albert at this point.
3. And what has the feedback been in that 7 months?
Well, I can tell you it's been very overwhelming success, not only on the operations side, but also the driver's feedback side, the passenger feedback side as well. Being able to ride in a quiet bus, the drivers themselves get less stress at the end of the day, so there is that non-environmental feedback and benefit you get from electric vehicles. Certainly pulling away from a curb, it's not as loud, not loud at all. You don't hear anything. There's no diesel fumes blowing on anybody. It's a big advantage.
Yeah, so I was going to ask that in terms of the impact on neighboring communities. So obviously, it's a lot quieter, so that would be definitely positive. So essentially, they don't make any noise.
Yeah, the only complaint you get is that people are overhearing some people's phone calls. That's about it.
Okay. And the range of these buses, can you reiterate what that was, please?
So the range of our 40-foot bus is over 300 kilometers. The range of our 60-foot bus is well over 400 kilometers. So we have an articulated bus, 60. We also make double-deck buses as well that range around the 400-kilometer range as well.
So that range is well within the capacity of range of any transportation system?
Usually it works out to about 85 to 90% of the routes we can meet. There are certain, if you ask anybody in transit, they will tell you they got routes that go 400, 500, 600 kilometers. Not a lot of them, but they do have those, so there are outliers.
So is this range like 100% range, or should you operate on an 80% factor? The last thing you want is have a breakdown. Are there any breakdowns at all, or any because of the battery failing in Alberta yet?
We haven't had any routes cut short because of battery issues or any range issues. They've been running the buses for 14 hours a day at sometimes. Vancouver just finished a 2.5 month study with our buses, put them out at 6 in the morning and bring them back at 8, 9 o'clock at night with no issues, with still 20 to 30% left on the battery.
In terms of operating costs compared to diesel, what can you, it's less?
Business cases that we've seen, we've replaced fleets of buses around the world.
Right.
So at one time, 3,500 in one city, another 7,000 in another. And we've seen reduction in cost of their over diesel 70%, between 50 and 70%, depending on the operating.
So operationally, it could save us quite a bit.
It will save
compared to budget. And the capital cost is?
The capital cost, again, is about 35% more for an electric bus. But really, when you look at if you utilize PTIF money, you will pay back that within the first year and a half.
So your payback on capital was about 18 months?
About 18 months, yeah, 18, 24 months, yes.
And Commissioner, I would just add that, as a car owner, we all know that the most expensive time to operate a car is close to the end of its life. It's equally true for any form of combustion engine.
Right.
It's not true for electric vehicles. The costs go down depending on the financing that you've arranged to acquire them, whereas with a diesel bus, the costs take a hockey stick in the last 2 or 3 years of their life. And sadly, much of Toronto's fleet is quite old.
All right, I think I covered my questions for now. Thank you.
Welcome. Commissioner DeBaremaker, then De Laurentiis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the deputants, and thank you very much for coming in today. At the very beginning of the presentation, I heard the number 25,000, but I was distracted and didn't get what. 25,000 what?
25,000 40-foot electric buses delivered around the world. Again,
Sorry, say that again,
25,000 40-foot electric buses are in service around the world today. Now, majority have been delivered by us, but by BYD, but there are other manufacturers that make electric buses that have delivered as well.
Okay, so if I can jump in right there, to my knowledge, I'm pretty sure we don't have any electric buses in Toronto in our fleet.
Not yet.
But there are 25,000 of them elsewhere.
Yes.
Why do you think people have purchased 25,000 buses around the world, but zero in Toronto?
I think that we got a late start in North America, and that I think if you came here 3 years ago and you pitched an electric bus to somebody, they wouldn't have listened. Today, it's a different story. It's different people in charge.
Okay, and you mentioned the numbers again briefly, and maybe you could expand on it. I think you used the number 7,000 and 3,500 buses. Were those purchases by cities or governments?
No, 7,000, no,
Cities.
Cities?
Well, some of the, like you say there's 25,000 electric buses out there in the world.
Those are fleet conversions
Other
done by
places-
cities, yes.
Places other than Toronto. So if I went to Europe, would I see any of your buses?
You'd see them in Europe.
How many buses might I see in Europe if I had some time and looked at all of them?
200.
200? So where are all these thousands of buses?
The majority are in China.
China? And I notice in the staff report, your company's name is, you submitted a response to this current bid that we're considering today, but you didn't put in a formal bid.
No, we did not put in a bid.
And that was a decision, so you chose not to compete.
Yeah, it was for diesel buses specifically, so we did not put a bid in.
So you're saying if we had just put out an RFP that said we want this many buses with this performance criteria, you would have bid?
Absolutely.
But because we said they were, I'll put in quotes, clean diesel fleet, yes, that we wanted clean diesel, you said, well, we don't make clean diesel. We don't make diesel. You stepped back because you couldn't supply us with a dirty bus.
Correct.
You can only supply us with a cleaner bus, depending on where we get our electricity.
Correct.
Okay, and in terms of the night recharge, because it just caught my attention, are you saying that with the range of the buses that you or another company might provide, they would come back, I think like Councilor Wong said at the beginning, bus driver drives it around today, people are very proud of that bus driver, comes back to the station and it's recharged at night when electricity prices may be lower?
Maybe lower or maybe even free.
Maybe even free. Now, how can you say that to us? Very exciting. You can imagine all of our ears perking up when you say...
Part of Ontario's climate change initiative is that they want to offer free power charging at nighttime for commercial use and home consumers, or personal electric cars.
So I'm not aware of that. So you're saying to us, and I'll have to ask our staff later on to catch us up on these facts, that any municipality in the province of Ontario, if they have electric buses, they can charge them at night for free?
I'm not saying they can get it for free yet, but it is going to be a minimal cost in the evening to charge it. Surplus power. That's something that needs to be discussed with Ontario Hydro, Hydro One, or Toronto Hydro as hey, I've got this massive amount of energy storage waiting to go. What do you want to do with your surplus power? Do you want to give it to New York State, or do you want to put it in my buses?
Sorry, could I just interrupt for a second? Just remind Commissioner, so this is a deputant on our procurement award of 440 diesel buses. We've had someone come in and say that they may be able to provide an alternative. So if the desire of the board is to have an electric bus 101, I think we should probably do that in a more structured way where it's on an agenda, where other people can depute, where other companies can be here, where the members of the public can ask questions along with us. And so if we can kind of try to keep our questions to this procurement, I've been really generous with that to this point. I think it would be beneficial.
Mr. Chairman, could I just add one last observation?
No, sorry, just because we're just doing questions of you right now, so that's kind of the process by which we're bound.
I just wanted to respond to Councilor Barrowmaker.
Yeah, so if he's finished your question, then go ahead.
Well, if you can respond to my question, that would be great.
The answer to why there are so few buses in North America is policy. The answer to why there are so many buses in Europe and Asia is policy. It is the policy of governments and transit agencies that led this revolution everywhere else in the world. And it will not be any different here, I think, is the answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner De Laurentiis and then Fragedakis.
Yes.
On this item.
No, we specifically did a study, there was a...
using your microphone so we can actually hear you. Thank you.
The question was winter performance of the electric vehicles. Yes, we have done studies on the weather affecting cold climate buses. We are in cold climate areas. Specific buses are built for cold climate areas. So more insulation, you've got better heating systems in it. You have zoned heatings where the driver has their own heat. You want to minimize the effect that heating has on the battery life, so we zone things to be like that. There's one thing specifically is air conditioning takes 7% load, 10% load for heating. So there's a lot of factors involved, and there's also minimums you have to meet for temperature in a saloon of a bus, and also the driver's area. So we have dialed in zones so that they meet all the requirements.
Commissioner Fragedakis.
My question is a follow-up to Councillor de Merrimaker's question. So you said that you had 25,000 40-foot buses, electric buses in service around the world. You also then said you had 200 of those buses were actually in Europe. 200, yet you made out a statement that said that it was a question of policy as to why we don't have a lot in North America. I don't know how you think 200 is a lot when you compare it to 25,000.
No, exactly, that's very true.
Perhaps your number was wrong, and maybe you'd like to...
The number is correct. Policies are being implemented now for those regions. Policies are being implemented across the United States as well. In California, different states are putting more incentives in to buy electric vehicles because they realize that they're a solution to the problem. The policies that were issued in China happened 6 years ago, five years ago, so that's why you see a lot more vehicles there now.
So you're still saying that you have 200 buses in Europe?
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, of the 200 buses, are they all like in trial stages? That's why the numbers...
Trial and purchased. Schiphol Airport is one of the largest ones.
In Amsterdam.
Amsterdam, London, double decks. We just delivered ours and it was received by Prince Harry, Prince William was. So all of our vehicles in London that are being delivered are a partnership with ADL. We do all the, the double deck manufacturer that sells to Metrolinx.
Okay, those are my follow-ups. I just wanted to make sure the numbers were correct.
Other questions for the deputant? Great, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Let's move to questions of staff. Starting with, oh, sorry, we have a presentation. My apologies. I'm sorry, we got sidetracked by our, well, that wasn't a presentation, just to.
Completely shut me
down. We're going to have a staff presentation on.
Oh, there you go.
Do we have it on both? Both, great, thank you.
So does it go right into the second one?
I'll have to decide.
Okay.
It's open.
There's too many friggin' presentations.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. First, I'll give you a presentation, a short presentation on the procurement of 60 low-floor wheel-trans vehicles. I'm going to touch on some of the characteristics of the vehicle, then I'll touch on a little bit of the financial impact on both the operating and capital budget, as well as the environment. So the vehicle you see on the screen is a standard Dodge Ram-based vehicle as compared to the friendly bus that we have in place. Just a little history. In the spring of 2016, we actually tested 4 different vehicles along with consulting ACAT on the topic of moving away from the family-friendly bus, as we call it. As you can see in the characteristics, it's a little shorter vehicle, significantly less weight, and it also has a better turning radius. We anticipate this vehicle to provide a much better ride and much easier to maneuver around the city. In addition, we know that the facility that we have today currently stores about 140 of the existing vehicles, of which another 60 vehicles are stored either outside or within bays. We have the potential of increasing the fleet size with this type of vehicle. It's been specialized in the past, and we're just moving forward. New is we actually worked through the Metrolinx Joint Transit Procurement Initiative. So Metrolinx helped purchase this vehicle with us. And as you saw in the report, the number of items that they deal with for us. As for funding, this funding is partially paid for by both the PTIF, the Public Transit Infrastructure Program, as well as the City of Toronto. As for financial, we know that this new vehicle will be much more fuel efficient as compared to the older vehicle, anticipating a roughly $2,000 a vehicle savings, or 15% cost savings for fuel consumption. It'd be $160,000 overall when all 80 buses are in. We're taking a small portion of that in the 2018 budget. From a capital perspective, doing a comparison to the purchase of the existing friendly bus and the life cycle of that being 10 to 12 years, in comparison to the new ProMaster looking at 5 or 6 years, it's a 20% cost avoidance on the capital budget by purchasing this vehicle. And taking the time value of money aside, you can look at, we've identified that the price of this vehicle with its overhaul as compared to buying 2 new vehicles of the new ProMaster. And lastly, when it comes to the environment, and we've had discussions, as you heard earlier, when it comes to Transform TO, with our focus on reducing the greenhouse gas effect, we know that this new vehicle has a 33% reduction in greenhouse gases for the City of Toronto. And that concludes that presentation. I'll now give you a presentation on the 440 purchase. Very similarly, I'll do an overview of the vehicle, talk about the financial summary and both the operating capital impact as well as the environmental impact. One of the concerns the board had the last 2 purchases was the fact that only one bidder was compliant, if you recall, and that was in the 2000 purchase as well as the additional 2 options that were exercised. This time we took a different approach, which I'll touch on shortly, but we've been able to have 2 bidders go through the entire bidding process, and in front of you, you can see the price of the unit at $661 as compared to the $654 that we had on the previous vehicle. Inclusive of a number of features we've identified with some external cameras, the CAT-AVL system, not the system itself, but that's the wiring and the harnessing system. We've changed the seating arrangements to have a little flip-up seats, as well as we're including USB ports in this procurement. When I mentioned that we took a different approach on the procurement, this time we went out with an RFI initially, and the intent here is to reach out to the vendors that were qualified to provide vehicles and find out what we could do to contour our technical and commercial specification so that it was open for compliant for more than one vendor, and we were successful in that. As well, for funding, we were eligible for PTIF money. One of the things that both vendors committed to was that they could provide 325 vehicles by March 31st of 2019, and that's why you see it phased. The other 115 are outside that time frame. And the other 50% comes from the City of Toronto. From a financial perspective as well, fuel consumption anticipated in this vehicle is significantly less at 28%. We also know that we've taken, in the 2018 budget, we've made an attempt to take a little of that savings going into 2018, as well as we know that for the 440 vehicles we're recommending replacing, 405 never had an overhaul. So they're in a pretty dire position right now, and we see that over the next year or two. So it's a $90 million cost avoidance to the capital budget for not being expended on an overhaul. And lastly, we have the environmental impact, again, mentioning the Transform Toronto. We know the newer vehicles are 28% cleaner when it comes to carbon emissions reductions for greenhouse gases for the story. With that, I'll take any questions, but I would like to state a little bit something regarding the presentation or the discussion that we just had. Later on this week, it's the TTC's intention to put out an RFI, a request for information. And we've been having discussions over the last 6 months with 4 of the electric vehicle manufacturers in North America. And the RFI is actually reaching out to them to ask them what type of partnership they'd like to be in with the TTC to pilot some type of new technology vehicle, i.e. the electric bus. The purchase of these 440, as I identified, is critical to the replacement of the existing fleet for the aging vehicles that are in place. And I remind people that my obligation day in and day out is to take care of the 1,900 buses in our fleet and make sure that we make service every day, putting over just over 1,600 buses, all right, to provide the service to the customers within the city of Toronto. So with that, I'll take questions.
Great. We'll start with Vice Chair Heisey, then go to Campbell, Byers, Mahevic.
So on the 440 buses, what would be the delivery schedule for those buses? Over what period of time would they be delivered? We don't get them all in a day.
No, they'd be, the first 325 would be mid-2018 through March 31st of 2019, and then the 115 just follows right on.
And would it be possible, if there was some interest, to hiving off a portion of this contract for an opportunity for electrical vehicles, to say to Novus that we'd take 300X now, and in 2 months' time, we'd confirm whether it would be another 115 at the same price? Would they accept that arrangement?
It could be a discussion that's had with them. Usually working with the manufacturers, they're very reasonable in negotiations. I do know that from the outcome, I'll be back in November with a presentation on new technology for this board.
In any event? In
any event. The intention right now is, if you saw in this RFP, in this contract, we have options for 20 and 21.
Right.
We've spent a lot of time in the last 6 months researching new technology vehicles. Again, I'll say primarily electric, although we've put a heavy emphasis on CNG as well.
Yep.
So our intent was to get this procurement in, keep the fleet at a steady state, and then look at what is the vehicle that potentially can come in for 20, 21, 22, 23. We know that technology has changed so greatly, and just in the last 6 months alone, that staff are really embracing this whole thought of new technology and moving in a different direction.
Okay, so I'd like Councilor Wong to hear this in particular. So the RFI that staff's advancing for electrical vehicles, what is the timing on the internally generated RFI for electrical vehicles, buses?
So would you say that again? I apologize.
Okay, so you said that you were developing an RFI internally for electrical buses.
New technology, as we call it.
But that's code for electrical buses, I think. Is it?
That would be correct.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
So, no, it's all right. So when would that RFI, that would come to the board for approval, that RFI, or would you just do it?
No, that we would just do that. Our intention is to put it on the street by the end of this week, so that when we come back and do a presentation to you in November, we can tell you, we can make you aware of the benefits of electric vehicles, as well as what's out there. Right now, I'm aware that there are less than 200 electric vehicles operating throughout North America in about 40 different properties. I'm also aware that a number of number of transit systems are also in the process of making bigger purchases, like you heard earlier with LA. I think it was 60 purchases, 60 additional vehicles they exercised an option. I've had a number of discussions with my peers in the industry, and it's really moving fast and it's transitioning, and we want to get into that position.
So Rick, in a perfect world, you'd come to us with information about electrical buses and new technologies in the November meeting, and how would that translate into a decision matrix if we thought it was a good idea and you'd identified the 4 manufacturers? How would you see that unfolding going forward, affecting potential future bus purchases that you have on your radar? Aside from the ones that are in front of us today.
Right. No, absolutely. We would sit down later on this month with the 4 vehicle manufacturers and let them make proposals to us. We're hearing a lot of different discussions regarding leasing buses and buying back buses and batteries. We want them to make a proposal and put it in writing to us. I would come back to you in November and lay those proposals out for you. Would I like to pilot, say, 50 buses so that the TTC can get a little bit of knowledge and awareness of the new technology vehicles of the electric buses? Yes. I happen to know that of the 4 manufacturers, they're really categorized into 2 separate groups. All right, 2 of them do long-range vehicles, and 2 of them do more short-range vehicles. A number in the GTHA are actually testing those. And with short-range vehicles, they actually have charging stations actually around the municipality, and they charge during the day. It's a premium charge. We've had a lot of discussion with Toronto Hydro, for instance, and it really appeals to them to have us do charging in the evening. So those are the type of discussions that have to take place, all right, as we can become more knowledgeable and we move forward with the electric bus.
And then my last question is, in terms of range, how many kilometers does a typical TTC bus that's in service do in a day on one shift?
We have anywhere between 300 and 400 kilometers. Buses stay out all day long.
So that's our average?
Yes, it's in that time frame. The longest ones are pushed for.
What margin of, okay. So would a 300 kilometer range bus, would that satisfy your requirements for range for a one fill, one charge vehicle?
Yes, it would.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
Okay, moving to questions from Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rick, in the report, it says that Nova has been providing 40 and 60-foot low-floor diesel buses to the TTC since 2014 and has performed in a satisfactory manner. That's less than a ringing endorsement. How do their buses compare with those of New Flyer with other transit agencies?
I would think it was written in that manner, but I would say the buses that we're receiving now have significantly improved over the duration of the deliveries.
Okay.
They're running very well.
Right, okay. Who sells more buses in North America? Do you know?
I'm going to say New Flyer because New Flyer has been around longer. Nova's been around, I'm going to say for the last, I'm trying to get it in the time frame. I was in Sweden in 2004 when Volvo was buying Nova. So I'm going to believe they're around for only 10 years when New Flyer has been along longer.
So I see that the process you went through, there's, evaluation process, technical information. Is that, do you look at sort of like the historical performances of their product that they have currently on the market? I mean, you're looking at all of the data that they provide for you on paper, I suppose. Do you get buses and test them and do comparisons? Or how
We're a very close industry. We talk to all our peers about the relationship they have with their vendors and how they're performing. We actually, in the course of this, brought New Flyer vehicles on the property during the RFI process and let staff become familiar with it because they hadn't been familiar with it before. And after their review of it, they said this is a quality product similar to the Nova bus that we have.
Okay, so and the Nova buses so did it win out mostly on price, or were they comparable quality, or was it price because Nova won out?
It was price alone. The way we do it is We bring them all the way through to make sure, I'll say the bus is a bus.
Right.
Both are qualified, both sell in North America, both are good products, all right? Once we realize that the technical and in the commercial terms were fine with us, then it became price in the end.
Okay, what's the definition of clean diesel?
It's ultra.
It's used a couple of times in there, you know?
It is. It's ultra-low sulfur diesel is what we use, is the product we use today. Buses today are 97, I want to say 97, 90, I got to look for Bill Brown, our regional expert around here, cleaner than they were just 15 years ago. And ultra-low sulfur diesel is a removal of the sulfur, is just one of the aspects that makes a vehicle that much cleaner today than over 15 years ago. We put diesel particulate filters, we use urethra burning mechanisms, regeneration, there's a lot of elements of it.
And so why is diesel the preferred fuel over gasoline?
Engine longevity.
Engine longevity. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Byers, please.
Two questions. Number one, on the 12-year maintenance horizon, will this, I know this is an objective to eventually get to, will this purchase allow us to kind of lower our maintenance horizon down to that level or closer to that level?
In the 2018 budget, we have already taken some reductions in the operating and maintenance aspects, or I should say labor and non-labor line items, recognizing the new vehicles are coming in.
Okay. Number two, Mr. Yule made a point. He made it fairly subtly, so I don't know whether you picked it up. He asked about purchasing these buses with Metrolinx. I noticed in the minibuses you made a point of saying that. Curious of your reaction to that point that he raised.
So I've been on both sides. I've been, in my previous position, I purchased with Metrolinx. Having assumed responsibility a year ago for this position, I've told those in the GTHA that in the next procurement, it would be nice if we all did it together, whether Metrolinx takes the lead or we take the lead. We definitely get economies of scale. All right, when they buy a Metrolinx order, you know, one municipality is buying 10, another municipality is buying 15, right? We're buying large numbers. So the benefit for them, I believe, would be coming to us, but working through the Metrolinx project because they do a lot of the work for you.
So I take it you'd be open to...
Very much so. And I was open when we had the discussion regarding the 60 vehicles or even the 20 before that. It's work with Metrolinx. And that thing, because many of the GTHA transit systems already have vehicles like that in their system because they worked with Metrolinx.
Commissioner Mihevik is not here now. Other questions? Commissioner DeBeermaker, then Fragedakis.
I thank you through, Mr. Chair. In terms of our accessible buses, the photo that you showed has rear entry. And I thought we didn't like that, and that our customers don't like that.
That was something that was discussed, and working with ACOT, many people believe that, you know, having the option, if you back into an area, for instance, as opposed to, you know, side loading can be very difficult. On the street, side loading is wonderful. All right, backing into a driveway, some people would prefer the rear loading.
So that
it was an option that we put in.
Flexibility or options, but it doesn't mean we're going to require people, for example, to get off a bus on a busy street.
No, absolutely not, sir.
Okay. And in terms, well, I won't ask you about dirty diesel, but the clean diesel that we're talking about just means the diesel in our buses we put pollution control on, but we don't control the manufacture of the diesel. So the exploration, the drilling, the contaminants, the groundwater pollution, the escaping gases, the methane, all of that stuff, it ain't clean, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Other questions? Just a couple of quick ones for me. Remind me what certification is required for us to purchase a bus from a manufacturer? What do they have to receive? Is it Transport Canada certification?
Transport Canada, that's correct.
And how many bus manufacturers have that?
Right now in Canada, we have two, with New Flyer and Nova, when it comes to with diesel buses.
So, and that's just on the diesel bus front. So
That's
while we
correct.
talk about wanting to kind of have more people bid on our work and things like that, at the end of the day, only two companies are able to actually, we're only able to actually purchase from 2 companies.
Two of them that'll build large quantities of vehicles like that, that's correct.
And does that same certification standard apply to electric buses or?
Yes, right now
gas?
my understanding is there's 4 electric bus companies that are certified in North America.
In North America, and that's
In Canada.
In Canada. So the 2 under diesel and then the additional 4, or 4 in total under electric.
Correct, 2 of them are the same companies.
So that kind of, I don't know, limits or guides our procurement process probably more than anything. Like, so we shouldn't be surprised to only have seen 2 bidders on this bid.
That's correct. In the last 10 years, 2 or 3 other major manufacturers have all gone out of business. Orion, we were a big Orion property. They're no longer in existence. Naby's no longer in existence. It's just Neoplan is no longer in existence. Companies that I've dealt with in the past.
Okay, thank you. Just in terms of the way the procurement was actually structured, did the procurement state specifically 440 buses?
It did.
And I don't know who this question is to. If that were to change by motion on the floor today, that we're not awarding a full 440, does that jeopardize the integrity of our procurement process? Does a bidder who doesn't win that come back and say you've changed it now?
I think the head of procurement chair should answer that question. Ted, will you come up, please, and answer that?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. We would have to confirm that the price would be held if we reduce the quantity. The bidder bid on 440 buses. We would need to officially confirm that the price that was provided for that amount of buses would be held for a lower volume. But I don't know what the answer to that is. Officially, I'd have to confirm that. That would be the only mitigating challenge that we would have in reducing the amount.
But there's not a scenario where, say, a disgruntled losing bidder would now challenge or question the entire process?
No, and I think that we could confidently, go back to the bidder, and I think the outcome would be that they would hold the price, but I can't confirm that officially until we speak to the vendor.
I'm less worried about the winning bidder and as opposed to, say, a losing bidder on the process. Does this just give them a crack or a window to suggest that our process is somehow flawed?
I don't think so. Overall, they provided a price for 440 vehicles. They could challenge it, but I don't see that they would have really any merit to really come back to us with a large challenge, no.
Okay. And just because so much of this conversation today is kind of veered towards different technologies, just remind me or kind of tell me the sequence. In the presentation it was mentioned that there was an RFI that was already going out this week, and then a presentation that I guess we had made a motion of, I think Commissioner Min Wong maybe, and that is coming back when, sorry?
In November.
So the RFI is scheduled to go out this week regardless of this 440?
Correct.
And then a presentation coming back in November is kind of speaking to what our future looks like in bus procurement? Is that
The industry, new technology, as well as our fleet plan going into the future. About 18 months ago, you had a presentation that talked about getting to program procurement, right? And at certain times in a bus's life cycle, many times funding from other levels of government come in and we buy a lot of buses at one time. That has happened over the years as well. So we want to get to that steady state procurement.
And just one last question, and I'm not sure if there's anyone at the table, I certainly wasn't here when we procured and purchased the hybrid buses that have been kind of a disaster here. What was that driven by? I've told some of it was because there was actually, ironically, federal funding available. I've heard it's kind of the whim of the day of kind of good intention counselors. What got us into that situation where maybe with good intentions we had a product that didn't work out for us?
That's exactly what you said is my understanding. We ended up with one of the first generations of hybrid buses, and as with CNG, the first generation, as with the first generation of many products, they evolve and they get better over time, and we had quite a few.
And just adding on that, regardless of what motions might be moved today or what we might do coming out of the RFI that you spoke of or the report in November, I'm assuming there's kind of something built in so that we've learned our lessons from that incident And so that we're not in a situation where, again, with either good intentions to be early adopters or to be doing the right thing, that we're stuck with a situation or a product that doesn't work for us.
That would be our intent that was our intent originally, to pilot a small number of vehicles, whether it was 40 or 50, to do just that.
Did we pilot those hybrids?
My understanding is they were just purchased.
Okay. Thank you. It looks like, Commissioner Fragedakis does have a question.
Okay, sorry, I don't mean to beat the issue about the electric bus technology, but you said that the electric bus technology is rapidly improving, so delay in purchasing electric might likely result in buying a much better bus. Is that correct?
I would say that's correct.
Okay, so
From what I've seen over the last 6 to 12 months.
Okay, so yet your advice is to make this purchase now so as to not undermine service and then reach out to the 4 major electric bus companies to develop a plan for the near future. Is that correct?
That was our intent. That's correct.
Okay. Just trying to make sure I get it correct.
These good questions trigger other questions. Commissioner DeBeermaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think as a commissioner that was there during the hybrid purchase, which we all bragged about because it was a very good thing, would you agree with me that part of the problem, or the major part of the problem, was really the company that we contracted with? It wasn't the technology and being a hybrid. It's just that the company wasn't giving us the spare parts. I don't know if they went bankrupt or not, but they were a big mess.
They had a lot of issues with that vehicle, that's correct.
Yeah,
But can I just add to that, Commissioner, though? I mean, it's sort of chicken and egg, isn't it? They may be the best company in the world, and they could be really responsive in giving you a replacement part, but you're still having to ask for a replacement part. The batteries were a disaster. We've changed all the batteries on all of the hybrid buses. How that's good for the environment is beyond me. They have been an unmitigated disaster. We want to get rid of them. And that's not unique to the TTC. New York City Transit and a bunch of other transits are scrambling with us to deal with the same problem. And that's the reason we are somewhat reticent about diving in to technology before we're certain we're not going to get our fingers burned again.
Okay, great. Thank you.
To speak, Commissioner Min Wong is first on my list.
I have a motion. I work on 10 times. This is great. So the recommendations be amended toward 325 low-floor clean diesel buses to Nova. The TTC issue an RFI for electric buses and report back on the results on the RFI in November, and further bring forward the report on new technologies for buses at that time, paying particular attention to the maturity of the battery-powered bus technology. The TTC will report back on awarding Nova the additional 115 buses on the same terms if the TTC does not award the contract for 115 electric buses, and the consideration be given to job creation opportunities in Toronto, Ontario, and Canada in the RFI and bus technology report. I'll just speak to this within my 5 minutes. So this commission, or as we, can be cautious leaders, timid leaders, or reckless leaders in terms of what we do. Those are the choices. So Rick, Mr. Leary here, his responsibility is to get the buses to run on time. And we don't want to get any type of technology that's going to fall apart. None of us want to do this. So that would be, buying like 500 buses, electric, new technology buses. We could be timid leaders and maybe buy 5 or 6, right? And not get where we need to be in the time that we have. Or we could be cautious leaders, and we could actually be a little bit more aggressive than just buying 5 or 6. I understand. I've had discussions with myself about which way we should go about this, understanding that Mr. Leary has to run. We have to have all these buses on the road to deal with our passengers. And my thought was about buying these 440 buses was these buses are going to be on the road for a dozen years or 15 years. And so these dinosaurs, we're buying dinosaurs that are going to burn diesel for 15 years. I'm not sure I'm terribly comfortable with that. So the motion that I came up with is actually a cautious one. So ultimately, we should have had the bus technology report here at the September meeting. That's the motion we moved, and staff didn't have time to prepare that report. So instead, what I'm recommending is because we have this proposal, this procurement proposal in front of us, to carving off a part of that to look at the to look at the new technology report in November so we can make an informed decision. If we award the entire contract today, then we wouldn't be able to buy those extra 100 or 115 buses. So what I'm asking today is that we take the time to do that, and we issue the RFI, request for interest, to see which companies are interested. And then we'll get the technology report back in November, and if we don't like that report, then we don't have to issue any type of RFP, and in fact, we can go back to the NOVA original order. The other thing I'll say is, and I know there's a concern with regard to this, would there be consequences from any of the successful bidder or any of the other bidders? I'm satisfied from my discussions with Mr. Leary and with Mr. Leck that they are satisfied that this motion they've both seen this motion, and they are comfortable with the motion, that it doesn't cause Mr. Leck any concerns after speaking with Mr. Leary. Is that? Yes. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions of the mover from Vice Chair Heisey.
So, Mr. Leary indicated that there'd be, and I was unclear about this, an RFI in November. Is that different than the RFI you're proposing in the motion? So does that fit with Mr. Leary's own timing? He just said yes.
It does fit with his timing. I'm just putting it in terms of a motion.
Fine.
And then marrying that with the, looking at or just carving off a spot to purchase as part of this procurement process.
I'm fine with that. Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions for the mover from Commissioner Crisanti?
So November timeline is something that's doable? You confirm that?
Yeah, I think it is. And the other thing is that we have to make sure that the PTIF funding is still available for any potential vendors. And from my discussions with staff, that is true as well. That is protected as well.
So this is a request for information?
It's an RFI, so we go.
Right. Expression of interest.
Expression of
interest.
So we go to these companies and say, are you interested in bidding on this? What do you got?
And then we got to go through a bid process after.
And then we would have to go through a bid process. But the key to this, Commissioner, is that it will come at the same time as the new technology report comes, and we can consider them together. We don't have the opportunity to do that today because staff weren't able to prepare the report.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Any other questions for the mover? This is for the mover of the motion. Other speakers. To Bearmaker, then
Can I just say one other thing? I came in today, just 30 seconds, that I wasn't going to do this, and it was Councillor de Bearmaker, through his enthusiasm. We worked on this together. So I give Councillor de Bearmaker credit or blame. It depends on how you're voting.
Credit now, blame later. Okay. So who's next? De Bearmaker. Good segue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if I'll take credit or blame.
Time will tell.
Certainly I and other commissioners over the years have advocated to go to a cleaner technology. And we did our hybrid buses with the best available information. They were not a successful pilot project. If they had been, we'd all be dancing in the street. In fact, we wouldn't be buying diesel right now while we'd be buying the hybrid ones. But again, it's like comparing the Commodore 64 computer that you used to own to a computer that you own today, or your iPad that you own today, or even your cell phone. Your cell phone today is more powerful than a Commodore 64. So to look at the first generation of any technology, your cell phone that was the size of a walkie-talkie, and say, yeah, we did buy some of those cell phones. They were the size of walkie-talkies, and the batteries were lousy, the range was lousy. We're not going to buy any cell phones anymore. We would all say, you must be crazy. Have you seen the latest BlackBerry or Samsung or iPhone? They're amazing technology. So I think now is the time to get away from the diesel buses. I've always wanted to move away from them. We've asked our staff in the past, can we go to a cleaner technology? At the time, they said, well, the technology isn't there, wait a little longer. But we're making a decision today that's going to impact our residents at least for a decade, if not a decade and a half to 2 decades, where we are putting dirty diesel buses out on the street. The phrase clean diesel is like clean coal. It's just not a reality. You go to Europe, they're selling car manufacturers in the hundreds of millions of dollars for falsifying air emission tests because the diesel vehicles weren't meeting the actual standards. So I think the advantages of these buses, they are quieter. I'm sure we've all stood by a bus as it has zipped by us. Your body vibrates. Your dog sitting beside you vibrates. Everything vibrates when that bus goes by. The electric buses are quiet. In fact, one of the concerns of electric vehicles is they're so quiet, people may not realize they're coming and may walk into them while they're looking at their cell phones. So to have quieter vehicles in the city, to have cleaner vehicles, I've stood by those buses, and if you stand by them too long, you have a little thin film of black soot on you when you go home. During election campaigns, I'll wave at cars from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning, and when I go home, I have to shower, and there's a layer of black and grime and soot on my bathtub because I've been there amongst all the TTC buses. This is what our customers breathe in and experience every single day. I think they're going to turn out to be lower cost. There's fewer parts, there's fewer spare parts, there's fewer things to go wrong. I think the fuel is a better fuel and it's going to in the end be a cheaper fuel, but we can't make those decisions today because our staff haven't done their due diligence. So I support the motion to say, let's take at least 325 today. That fits with our federal funding. It makes sure that our fleet is strong, but it gives our staff time to go back, look at the options, come back in November to say, here are the pros, here are the cons, and here's our recommendation. So I think it's a good motion, and it's, I'm very happy to support a motion that'll see 325 buses purchased today with maybe another 100 or so in a couple months from now. But I think this would be very good for our city, and I think we're going to be very pleased when the staff report comes back. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next on the list is Commissioner Fragedakis.
So I'll be brief. I'm kind of worried about compromising our timetable. I know we actually need 440 buses. So, and while Councillor Min and Wong, or Commissioner Min and Wong talked about being timid commissioners or being brave commissioners, I'd like to be a wise commissioner and I'd actually like to follow staff's advice and develop a pilot program and then buy something that works and we know is good value. So I won't be supporting it, the motion by Councillor Min and Wong, even though I've thought about it quite a lot throughout the day. I've decided to stick with the recommendations of staff, and as such, I'm going to be moving recommendations of staff, so I should have done that right at the very beginning. So there you go.
Thank you. Other speakers? Yeah.
Question is whether the chair would entertain us being allowed to ask questions of our staff on the two motions, given that the size of dollars might require that. It seems to be wise.
That's the will of the board, so what, do we need a motion for that, or can we just? A motion to vary the procedural order to go back to asking questions of staff, and then, all in favor? Opposed?
I had a question. Is it possible that if the questions relate to the procurement process,
Yes.
then some of those questions might be in camera?
Mine aren't.
Okay, good.
We'll see. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. So my question really is around this. Really, it's the 115, and whether we can tolerate, frankly, I guess it's a 2-month, who's addressing? I'll address it to the CEO. Whether we can tolerate a 2-month delay. It doesn't mean that we're not going to do it. It just means that it allows the work that you're going to be doing, it seems anyway, to catch up to so that we are comparing the possibility of a few, and you might come back and say 50 of the 115 left, let's do 10 of them, 20 of them, 50 of them battery powered, and the other 65 or whatever it is to be continue the order that we have here. Is there any any negative side that you can point out with the motion that has been presented by Councillor Wong?
Well, I think I'll just summarize it, that the known outcome is to follow staff recommendations and award the full order now, because that we can pretty much say that we know what the time frame will be on that. We know what we're buying. We know when we'll get them. The alternative is to do what has been proposed, to split the order. What I can't predict is what the outcome of that will be, but we have said in any case we're going to do an RFI for alternate technologies anyway, and put that report up. So I don't think there will be a massive downside, but it's less predictable as an outcome than going with a known order, with a known price, with a known manufacturer and a known technology right now.
Can I ask, if we were to come back with a report, and the report said around the electric vehicles that we should experiment a little bit and let's say purchase 50, I think staff mentioned the number 50, would that would impact the ridership growth strategy or the next replacement order? Or tell us how that might fit into the grand scheme of things.
The more that the replacement bus order is watered down, the more we're beginning to get into conflict with what you rightly questioned us over earlier, namely why do we have declining service hours? Well, partly it's a result of unreliable vehicles, e.g. streetcars, for which we want to substitute with reliable buses, and that would, if there was a protracted delay, that would mean that we were not excuse me, is able to ramp up service, were the ridership growth strategy that we're going to propose to you, were that to be successful. So what we're trying to do is safeguard the future while absolutely not ruling out electric. That's why we're doing the RFI anyway. We're keen to do electric, but we're also very keen to make sure we protect the service. That's what you pay us to do. That's the basis of our recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Byers?
So just following up Joe's comments, you said in your report at the outset we're 103 days away from TYSSE opening. Please do not throw additional stuff on our plate to compromise that. I take it that the process that's been outlined here does not fit into that category. You're okay to proceed with this RFI, or I don't want to put words in, but that's my question. Does this put a roadblock, a block in there that you'd prefer not to have, or?
Well, I mean, it won't stop the TYSSE opening, but it's more work. And my plea was genuine at the start, because we have so much to do to achieve what will be the crowning achievement of 5 years that we do not want to get wrong, opening Spadina with ATC and Presto and Wi-Fi by the end of this year. In other words, 103 calendar, not working calendar days. Having said that, we are going to do the RFI report anyway, but this would add to that workload, but it won't stop TYSSE, if that's your concern.
Other questions in this round? We have to go back to speakers, so. Yeah, because we interrupted the speakers list to go back to questions. So to speak, we've had Commissioners Minnan-Wong, DeBaremaker, Fragedakis, and now Vice Chair Heisey.
I'm going to support the motion on the premise that it does not affect the pricing on the Novus order of 440, because we'll decide in November if we have enough information to proceed or not, which isn't very long away. Staff's already doing the report. There are dramatic things going on in electric vehicles. I'm a notorious late adapter. I still have a 2002 car, and it's the most current car I've ever owned. So that's where I speak from. That's whereof I speak. I also was chairman of the Toronto Parking Authority when we made the decision against the recommendation of staff at the time to implement pay and display throughout the city. And then staff said it had to be wireless technology, which had never been done in the world before. We were the first ones to do it. We did it successfully. Everyone copied us. Somebody has to do it first. I'm concerned that this may be too early, but we're going to find out in November. That's my own instinct on it. Then the other thing I'd remind some of my friends on council, who are on council, is that they work with Councillor Minnan-Wong, who is not famous for wanting to spend public money. But he's interested in spending public money on what he thinks is a fiscally conservative and environmentally responsible form of transportation, and I think we should support him in advancing that goal. And I hope he's right. We'll find out in November. If we don't have enough information, it'll just be Novus buses, and we'll do it next year or the year after that. But that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Other speakers? I'll speak. I have a motion unrelated to, well, I guess it could be related to electric buses. My motion basically speaks to the fact that I think we are getting early indicators, and it probably would make a lot of sense to many, that the PTIF, all the city's PTIF money will not be spent in time. And so we have to start getting our heads around that and recognize there's a great opportunity, because one thing that you can deliver within the time windows that have been set out by the federal government are new buses. And so they could be electric, they could be clean diesel. I'm not even speaking to that, but I want staff to report back on some of those opportunities that may present themselves. And it doesn't have to be buses, but other TTC capital work that could be used or bumped to the top of the list to use some city funds that may not be used in time during the PTIF time period. Yes.
So are you saying that there's city money that is not allocated, that can't be spent currently, that isn't allocated to the TTC? Okay, I didn't know that.
Correct. And I think it's the timelines for PTIF were very aggressive and short. And so that I'm going to support the staff recommendation as moved by Commissioner Fragedakis, because I think we should get these 440 buses and get them into our system. I think this provides us an opportunity to be a bit more creative if and when, and I think it's going to be when, those other funds become available, and we need to start spending those dollars so that we don't lose the money from the feds. It does not have to be December. I can change that to on the fly as soon as possible.
So
there could be.
Question of mover.
Yes.
So is your motion inconsistent with Councillor Min and Wong's motion? It doesn't seem to me it is.
No, I don't think so. I just, again, it's early indicators that there will be tens of millions of dollars that the city, remember, this is all of our funding for these buses and anything else we spend PTIF dollars on is city funding, that money will not be able to be spent within the timelines that have been given by the federal government. And so we should be ready and willing to help solve that problem for the city. Okay, to speak, Commissioner Mihevc.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think some of this is a little bit of six of one, half dozen of another. I think where both roads go to the same place, one way or the other. We're going to get a report in November. I guess if there is a value add to Councillor or Commissioner Min and Wong's motion, it is that the board would be indicating to staff that we're really behind you in exploring this electric bus technology. I think that's what the value add at the end of the day is to his motion, and I can support it on this basis. I think, some of us have been following the electric bus debate for a little while. Certainly 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the broad consensus in the Canadian industry was that we are not ready. We're not ready. For those of us who went to the Montreal UITP, people were saying, you know what, we're close. We're getting really close, that we're on the verge there of having something that is internationally acceptable, and that it might be time for us, TTC, very conservative procurement organization. I get it. That's the history here. And I think that for us to say as a board, well, let's give it a good due diligence. You might come back, staff might come back and say, you know what, we're not there yet. The industry is not there yet. And if that's the conclusion that staff come to, I will honor that. I, for one, will honor that and respect that. But I think doing a deeper dive, and which is what staff is kind of doing anyway, I think is warranted. And if we can do a purchase of 50, 100, like sooner or later we're doing this. The question is when is the right time to do it? And now's as good a time as any to explore a little bit deeper dive whether it's the right thing to do. So I do think it's a little bit of six of one. Both roads are going to go to the same place. So on that basis, I'm going to support Commissioner Min Wong's motion.
Great. Any more speakers? Questions? Musings? Okay, so we're going to do it in this order. We're going to vote on Commissioner Min Wong's. Okay, why don't we do that? Why don't we vote on item 8 because that has no amendments on it. And that is for the 60 wheel trans vehicles. I'll move the staff recommendation. All in favor? That carries. Okay, so item number 8 is done. Item number 9, we'll first vote on Commissioner Min Wong's amendment. And I'll ask for a recorded vote on this. All in favor? Mahevik, Byers, Campbell, Heisey, Min Wong, De Laurentiis, DeBaremaker, Crisanti, opposed, Cole, and Fragedakis. The second amendment is on the PTIF report. All in favor? That carries. And I guess on the item as amended, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. We're done number 9. Item number 10, we have people here to speak. Beginning with Councillor Ainsley.
I'm happy to let number 13 go. I've talked to staff, and I see public health staff is here, and I've asked my questions of them. They're doing a great job.
Okay, so all in favor of receipt on item number 13, that carries. Thank you.
Sorry to hold you so long.
Okay, item number 10, we have speaking to Durham Region Transit access to Scarborough Centre Station, Councillor Paul Ainsley, Alan Ewell, and Rosemary Fry. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Glad to be back.
Well, whenever you like, go ahead.
I start speaking, all my colleagues leave the room, except for Councillor DeBemery. So I'm here. I want to thank you, first of all. I was here at the TTC Commissioners meeting in January, where I raised a concern that I heard from a lot of people at the time about connections between Durham and Scarborough, and the inability of people, in particular, to get in from Durham from Scarborough, and because at the time I was the closest Scarborough-based councillor to Durham, I got a lot of phone calls and emails and social media contacts about that. Since then, this report's been written. One of the things that it talks about is there's 2 connections between Scarborough and Durham Regional Transit, one being the Scarborough Town Centre, or sorry, not the Scarborough Town Centre, U of T Scarborough campus, which brings a lot of students in from Durham, and the other connection point is the Rouge Hills GO Train station, which is in the south end of Scarborough. And so overall, I'm happy with the gist of the report. I'm glad that the recommendation in the report is to continue working and to continue those negotiations. I just wanted to raise a couple of points, and I'm going to preface it by the one question that I hear often, not from everybody in Scarborough or Durham, but definitely from a group of people that use public transit more often than not. And that question people raise with me is, when can people on bus routes expect more service than just new buses replacing older buses? And I say that with the greatest amount of respect, but the problem that people are having, and I've heard this more since last January, not only about people getting in from Durham, is people from Scarborough trying to get out into Durham. And I experienced that myself earlier this week. Our middle child had to get to a youth group meeting in the middle of Oshawa, trying to figure out how to take public transit from Scarborough, and it was a mix of TTC going. He actually had to go south in Scarborough to go east to get to Durham. And that actually, it was such a convoluted route by the time you were trying to get from Scarborough to Oshawa. I finally juggled some meetings that I had, and I drove my child there because it was easier for me to drive him there than him to take public transit. And this is something that I hear right across the spectrum from students, people, tourists, people trying to get employment. U of T Scarborough's in the eastern end. I hear that from students all the time. Most recently, students have started coming to me and people saying that they like better connections from Markham as well. But getting back to this report, some of the concerns that I saw about it, it's not as seamless as this report says, as I just illustrated with the trip I tried to do with my child to get them back and forth to Oshawa. There's a bus rapid transit line that's raised in this report. If you go out to Durham, they're working very hard on Kingston Road. The idea behind the bus rapid transit line is a seamless bus trip from the middle of Oshawa to the Scarborough Town Centre. They're working very hard on it in Durham. In Scarborough, not so much. Councillor de Beermaker will remember a few months ago when we were talking about public transit in the Scarborough Town Centre and the type of hub that we want there. And I raised the bus rapid transit system along Ellesmere, and staff said that they were working at it. Currently, my ward, which runs from between Morningside and Markham Road, a large part of that Ellesmere area is currently paved. It's being paved. When I raised the issue with staff about the bus rapid transit line running along Ellesmere, I got a lot of blank looks and stares. They knew nothing about it, which was a huge concern for me as we're trying to take care of our tax dollars and making sure we're having better public transit, that this is one of these key routes that's mentioned in this report. Transportation staff know very little about it. The other alternative that's raised, the other two alternatives that are raised in this is the Scarborough Town Centre route, that, there's no bus capacity at the Scarborough Town Centre, that we need to wait for the new station to be built. As many of you know, that station is only partially funded. The money that we're looking for it is a very substantial amount of money. And my residents would like to see that bus service now and the connections between Scarborough and Pickering, and not have to wait for that bus station to be built. One of the other items that's raised that I'd like to see explored a little further in the discussions is about Durham Transit has the availability to go into the Scarborough Town Centre and do a bus loop in the area around the Scarborough Town Centre. If any of you have gone to the Scarborough Town Centre, the roads around the Scarborough Town Centre, they're closed, open and closed only when the mall is open and closed. So trying to have a bus route around the Scarborough Town Centre that's available throughout the day when the mall's not open, or on holidays when the mall's not open, is not an option. Even if you could loop it around the Scarborough Town Centre, once again, it's not seamless for anybody trying to use it. It would be quite a walk from any of the public roads if that's what you ended up using, trying to get onto the subway system or the current SRT at the Scarborough Town Centre. So I would just like some of those all of those variables or items, issues looked into when the negotiations continue as we try to get some type of seamless transit between Scarborough and Durham.
Thank you, Councillor. You do have a question from Vice Chair Heisey, if you don't mind.
So the report recommendation in front of us doesn't deal with some of the things you just talked about. It only deals with making sure there's space in the enlarged bus terminal after there's the subway extension, correct?
Correct. The other...
I got your wants.
Yeah, sorry, the only other thing I wanted to raise that I neglected to raise was when I was here in January, was also some type of bus connection between Durham and the Toronto Zoo, which is in the decision document, but it's not raised in this report at all either.
Okay, so can you tell me what you'd like this board to do in addition to the recommendations that are in front of us? So it sounds, I'm trying to understand, what's your desire ahead of the Scarborough subway extension to make better provision for buses at the Scarborough Centre? What is it that you would want to see happen there?
In a nutshell.
On an interim basis.
Yeah, in a nutshell, I think I would like, and Durham Transit and people going back and forth, would at least one bus bay where the Durham Transit can get into the Scarborough Town Center, and people don't have to walk 100 meters from the road to the subway station, and have that called seamless.
Okay, so then the next question is who pays? So we've got this idea. Do you have any views on who should be responsible for funding a larger bus terminal to accommodate Durham? And any cost that might be associated with this idea of an additional bus bay?
Well, from the discussions that I've had with politicians from Durham, they would like the bus bay, and I'm sure that they would pay for it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Other questions for this deputant? No? Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next on the list is Alan Ewell. And after that's Rosemary Fry. Okay, I'll start your 5 minutes.
I'm a little bit disappointed in the tone and contents of this report. Page 1 of this report references two major transit projects. These are the Eglinton East Light Rail Extension and the Durham-Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit Extension. These will result in improved cross-boundary transit service between Durham Region and Scarborough Center Station. So let's look at these projects. Neither are funded. The Eglinton East is not funded, the Eglinton East Extension, and while there is political rhetoric to build it, it may be there. I don't see the political will doesn't seem to be there. I'm even willing to bet with a certain Scarborough commissioner that the Eglinton West Extension of the airport will be built long before an LRT gets built to U of T on Eglinton. Scarborough campus is one of the DRT connections mentioned in this report. 9 p.m. last night, I checked DRT's website regarding the BRT, and it seems to be more in the study phase and not near the RFP, according to their website. Well, it may be part of the 2008 big move. It's 2017, and it's still not moving that much. Page 2 of this report says Durham Region Transit provides local transit service in Durham Region, makes connections with the TTC at several locations in Toronto. Mentions 2 routes. Report makes it seems like there's a lot of connections to the DRT connections to connection points with the TTC, when in fact there are only 2 major connection points, U of T Scarborough, and this is more of a destination point for DRT than a connection to the TTC. The other major connection point is Rouge Hill GO Station. The majority of DRT customers are transferring to GO, and only some transfer to the TTC there. DRT and TTC connectivity is so bad that the DRT is not even on our GTA Metro Pass. Brampton is on the Metro Pass, and they have to go through Mississauga or through York Region to get to Toronto in most cases. From this report, one might get the vibe that the TTC doesn't play well with others. So can I propose a potential compromise? What if the DRT used Lawrence East SRT station instead of Scarborough Centre? While this is not ideal because it's not the closest station to Durham Region, but there is precedent for that, as My Way uses Islington, and that's not the closest station to the Mississauga border. Lawrence East Station is operating under capacity and could easily absorb more buses, unlike Scarborough Town. Using Lawrence East would allow DRT to determine if there's enough customer demand for a DRT route connecting to our subway network. Whatever you may think of the one-stop hole in the ground, it's 39 bus bays we're building there, and it's at least 8 years away. DRT and TTC needs to find a solution far sooner than that. For anyone who may think that this is only a 905, these are only 905ers, so why should we bother? These 905ers are coming into our city to work at businesses that pay Toronto municipal taxes. or to shop at Toronto stores, go to theaters, restaurants, etc., that also pay Toronto municipal taxes. If Toronto is going to remain business-friendly, then this matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No, thank you very much. Next on the list is Rosemary Fry.
I'll pass.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to questions of staff, and I believe that Commissioner DeBaremaker and then maybe Heisey does.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I think most of us has been out to the Scarborough Town Center Station, and yes, it is at more than 100% capacity. But our buses manage still to get in there. They park on the side, they line up behind each other, they zig, they zag, and everybody seems to get along okay. So I was surprised when I saw this report that we, the TTC and Durham Transit, didn't say, well, yeah, okay, we'll let your buses in here. You may not have a designated space that's privately your own, but this will be the platform where you piggyback on some of our service. So did we actually look at allowing their buses to come and park in our bays and share them with us, if you will?
We actually didn't do that because at present, based on the standards that we have, we need more bays for our operation. So we didn't look at having another bus come in, because right now we are looking at adding service, and we can't add service because we don't have enough space. We actually have a study that's been undertaken currently. We have a consultant who's reviewing our terminals, because we haven't expanded on these in years, and we have added several routes, and we're now looking at the ridership growth strategy to add more service. We have an express route which we have coming for Scarborough, which we can't do unless we can find the space to put it in there. So how we have operated, and also because how we operate, we have free body transfers. If we allow Durham customers to come into our station and be dropped off in there at our current base, then we'll have to work out some fair arrangements. We share with Mississauga, for example, at Islington, but they drop off their customers outside the terminal, and then they have to come through the fare gates to get in. So there are different logistics that we'd have to work out in order to accommodate Durham in the terminal.
Just so that I understand, are you saying that right now, some of our bus routes, say within Scarborough, are bypassing the Scarborough Town Centre?
No, I did not say that. All of our service terminates at Scarborough Centre.
It's just crowded.
Yes.
And you don't have your own, whatever route you are on, it doesn't have its own private bay, it has to share that with...
We have routes that share bays right now.
You might want to go eastbound, I might want to go westbound, and we have to share the same platform. Sometimes it can be a little confusing, but most people get on the right bus at the end of the day.
Yes.
So, again, I'm trying to understand, so if a Durham bus, and I understand the logistics of, if I come in on a Durham bus from Pickering, I might sneak down up to the LRT and not pay a second fare, but if we worked out those physical logistics, wouldn't we as the TTC want the Durham customers coming right into our LRT station now, or SRT station now?
Sure, we want to have that connectivity, but also what we have to think of is safety. So if we have overcapacity, as our standards indicate.
And we have overcapacity today.
And we do have overcapacity right now, based on the standards that we have, both from E&C and looking at other terminals and/or pairs. We are overcapacity at Scarborough. It's one of those stations that we're overcapacity.
The Durham buses would be a teeny weeny little addition, right?
I get the point you're making, Commissioner, but the point is that where we have overcapacity, there's much more, the probability of us having bus-to-bus contact increases, and that's one risk that we did not want to introduce.
May I just add to that, Commissioner? I mean, and you know the area better than me, but I've spent a fair bit of time at Scarborough Terminal. It is incredibly congested down there because it's not ideal to have buses jumping around between stops. It confuses customers. Earlier on, we talked about the departure times for buses. You hold us rightly to account for KPIs. If buses continually leave late because customers don't know where to find the bus, you will hold us to account for that. If we see an increase in bus-to-bus contact, you will hold us to account for that. We heard earlier from Commissioner Mihevik on why it is that we're not running more buses. We want to run more buses, but the more we put into Scarborough from other companies like DRT, even if it's just one bus, that's less room to expand for TTC. What we can do, it's alluded to in this report, is work with Durham to find them a place on the street. But I absolutely do not recommend adding yet more buses, particularly from another operator, to an already very crowded terminal, if that helps.
I don't know if it helps, but it answers the question, yes.
You often say we should speak truth to power. There you go. Just
Other questions?
There's no power in this room, though.
Question from Vice Chair Heisey.
So I took, as a preamble to the question, I took the 107 from Downsview to Rutherford GO station in Vaughan, which is a TTC bus, and to my amazement, it picked up and dropped off passengers in Vaughan using TTC fare medium. And I looked at that and I thought, that's interesting, because I don't think 905 bus services can do that when they come into Toronto. Is that true?
We have, through the chair, we have contracts with YRT to operate on some of their routes, which includes the route you were on, sir.
Okay, but my question is, for example, if this Durham bus that people want to have go to the Scarborough City Centre, if it goes to the Scarborough City Centre, they go directly to the Scarborough City Centre from the Durham boundary, correct? They don't drop off within Toronto, or do they?
They can drop off and pick up within Toronto, but they're not supposed to drop off and pick up within the boundary itself. So your trip can start outside of Toronto and end in Toronto, at any stop within Toronto.
So you can't start within Durham and end in Toronto?
You can start in Durham and end in Toronto, but you can't be on a Durham region bus, start in Toronto. Say, for example, you shouldn't board at UFT Scarborough and end at Scarborough Town Centre on a Durham region bus, based on the City of Toronto Act.
Well, okay, but it sounds to me like there's some questions about capacity, bus capacity in Scarborough. So why isn't that something we'd want Durham to do to add capacity?
That's something that we're currently exploring. We are having that discussion with Durham, and we are currently doing that exercise as we speak.
Okay, and will you report to the board then on that idea and where it went and how you got there?
Yeah, we're going to report back on the issues with the City of Toronto Act and allowing for some efficiencies picking up in Toronto with our cross-border.
So we might need a change to the City of Toronto
Yes.
Act. Okay, I knew there was some problem. Okay, thanks.
Other questions? To speak, Commissioner DeBaremaker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, I just wrote it now, but it's a very simple motion. I'm just going to move the staff recommendations and add a recommendation number 3 that says that TTC staff meet with Councillors Ainsley and DeBaremaker to further discuss the possibility of permitting Durham Region Transit access to the Scarborough Centre Station. And I suppose this is sort of like first day back at school. I was off for the last couple of weeks, so when this agenda came out, I read it online. I didn't have time to talk to my colleague next door, the neighboring councillor, or TTC staff. I'm sure, of course, they would meet us anytime we want, but I just want to formalize it with a motion. Because when you're at that station, I don't think having 1 or 2 or 3 Durham Region buses coming into our station would be unsafe, would overwhelm the system. I see how everybody zigs and zags with the buses. So I think there's a possibility there, and maybe there isn't, and maybe Councillor Ainsley and I, after talking further with staff, will come to the same conclusion. But just as a layperson looking at all the buses and that great, it is a very busy bus terminal, I think there may be some other opportunities. So I'd just like to continue that discussion with staff. Thank you.
Questions of the mover? No. To vote, other speakers, to vote on the amendment, all in favor? The staff recommendation as amended, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Item number 14 is I believe, our final item. And we have a deputant, Alan Ewell.
What is it? Is it the edit?
This is it.
This motion is a great start, but it's not detailed enough. We should not only ask for changes as requested in this motion, but even more. Today is the first day of school, and many of our streetcars are carrying as many, if not more, students to elementary, junior, and senior high schools in its network as TDSP-sanctioned school buses in the same zone. Why do students in a yellow bus get more protection than students in a red streetcar? We should be asking the province to change the law that students on our streetcars and other passengers have the same protection. Passing the open side of a streetcar with its doors open and lights flashing on the new cars should come with the same fine and demerit points as passing a school bus with its doors open and lights flashing. We would have to change the sign on the back of the streetcar to read "Do not pass when lights are flashing." This motion also asks the TDC to affirm its support for using camera enforcement on the King Street pilot, transit priority lanes, the Bay Street Clearway, and for streetcar doors. Now, this may come as a surprise to people at Queen and Bay. I know it was for me, but there's actually more city north of Bloor. There are transit priority lanes all over our city, and these should be included in our request to the province. On the TTC, you can get fines for up to 58 different violations of bylaw number 1. These fines include a $5 court fee and a victim surcharge on top of the actual fine amount. Since we are asking the province to change the ticket laws to help move the TTC, let's go all in and ask them for a transit ticket surcharge as well. We have about 2,000 buses to equip with photo ticket cameras for transit priority lanes throughout our city. We will have 264 streetcars eventually, and we need to equip those with cameras in the front as well as the cameras on the doors. Having this transit ticket surcharge would help offset the capital costs of buying this equipment as well as maintaining the equipment. We also could add this transit ticket surcharge to fare evasion fines as well. Don't forget, we will be eventually adding POP and fare inspectors to our rocket routes as well as the 2 LRT lines that go into service in 2021. This transit ticket surcharge could help offset those costs as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? No? Thank you very much. Questions of staff on our motion? Commissioner?
Not
yet. Not yet.
I'm not that ambitious.
Not yet.
I'm running out of time.
I mean, or to the mover, yeah.
No, oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Secretary General.
Doors, so when the doors kind of open, there's that little flap, and that's what would kind of look to see if any
The vehicle's passing the doors when they're open.
turkey head
Yeah.
passes. But on King Street, that's not a physical possibility where we're doing the pilot. So I imagine that what you're imagining for King Street is that the camera would be frankly right dead center in the middle of the front of the vehicle to see if anyone kind of cheated and darted up the center.
Or any other way that we could monitor that kind of.
Yes, right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, this is done all over England. I agree with Mr. Euless that it should go further, but Rome wasn't built in a day. And I tried to get this done 13 years ago at the police board and didn't succeed in convincing my colleagues, unlike today. So hopefully it's a different day, because they just did drive-away tickets, parking tickets, which I never thought would be done. So maybe this government will listen to us on this item, because the Bay Street Clearway doesn't work. I ride on a bicycle every day. It's not enforced at all. King Street has a transit priority lane in the center from Yonge to almost the Don River, and it's not enforced either. It has a rush hour transit priority lane today that isn't enforced. So we won't ever get to enforcement in this without technology. And then once we've done that, Mr. Yule, I promise you, I'll push.
Thank you, Vice Chair Heisey. Any other questions of the movers, speakers, questions of staff? Thanks to Thanks to Vice Chair Heisey and Commissioner DeBaremaker, who have both taken an interest in this before and pushed this. All in favor of the motion? That carries. A motion to adjourn, Commissioner Byers. All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Well, if you can't reach that, then we'll make arrangements so that you can reach it. If that's too far for you to reach, no, we don't want you to have to do that.